Welcome, everyone, to the Underground Dhamma podcast, episode 10. That's right, 10 episodes, a nice round number. And my name is Juan, as everyone knows here. And today we have our normal co-host, Joanna, out. I'm guessing she's out there traveling the jhanas, which means the ecstasies of deep meditation, because she's in the meditation retreat for the next 2 weeks. So that means that today we needed a co-host, and I brought someone that has been very influential in my life. I don't know if this my friend knows this, but today we have my friend Ivan co-hosting. How are you doing, Ivan?
Hey Juan, pleasure to be here. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. No, I didn't really know that you think of me that way. I think of you that way. I hope you know that. But yeah, since we met, we've sort of been on similar kind of parallel paths. And,
yes.
We kind of come together and discuss our worldviews, the differences, the similarities, and, how really it's all just words anyway.
Exactly.
We're all just here in life.
Yes. And, that's what I appreciate about talking with you, that even though we have such distinct, I would say, perspectives, there actually are a lot of similarities, even though the distinctions between them are harmonious. And I like how we're open-minded as far as we don't hold on to our own perspectives, so that way we can discuss this. And Ivan, I don't know if you know this, but I remember I was just telling Joanna, our normal co-host, about you. And I told her that we used to get into these deep, high-level philosophical arguments, but where it wouldn't get emotional. It would just get really fierce intellectually. Is that what you remember too?
That's how I remember it. Like, I never took it personal. However, I would get frustrated
Yes.
in that I was trying to get my point across, but I would see that your point kind of agreed with my point.
Yeah.
But it was just expressed. It's words, come on. But really, the frustration was never personal. It was never directed at you or at me.
Yes.
Even it was just the passion of trying to figure things out and just talking to someone who's interested in the same type of things.
Yeah.
I feel like this is kind of a human pursuit. Everybody at some level is interested in philosophy. Everybody at some level is interested in the truth and life and, attaining something higher. However, life sometimes just takes you certain different ways where you can't pursue that wholeheartedly, or you can't use your talents in such a way as to try to develop that part of you. And it's always nice when I find someone that's hey, no, I don't care about that. I'm just going to pursue this 100%. I'm okay, I'm with you. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very rare for someone to be able to put down their baggage, their intellectual baggage that we'll call belief systems, in order to go the full way with you on a different perspective, to see whether it's reasonable and sensible. And yeah, that's very rare. And that's what I always appreciated about our conversations, hanging out with you, and just getting into it deeply. To me, it's like Vegeta and Goku sparring, but cognitively or intellectually. It's very fun. It's fierce but fun.
I agree. I like the imagery.
Yeah. Good. My last co-host, Joanna, called Dragon Ball Z a cartoon, and I think that I took a little personally, just because I love it so much. But
she doesn't get it.
Exactly. Thank you. But yes, you were very influential to my life, and I was writing down some pre-show notes. Very brief, nothing too deep as far as what I wrote down. But one of the things I wrote down is that in reality, there would not be an Underground Dhamma podcast if it wasn't for you. I know that's
a lot of credit, man. Thank you.
My pleasure. That's why I laugh as soon as I say it, because I know it's such a bold claim. But I don't think you've ever known me to make any bold claims without any reasons or any evidence behind it.
No, I know you thought about it before you said that, and even
Exactly.
more if you wrote it down.
Exactly. Which that's something I'm starting to do recently on the behest of Joanna, and also one of the abbots of my temple. About maybe a year ago, he told me to start writing down my thoughts. What do you think about writing down? I wasn't even thinking of asking you, but what do you think about writing down your thoughts?
Uh, I have a lot of thoughts on that,
Go ahead,
but I
man.
haven't written those down.
I'll
um,
take them.
yeah, I don't know if we really want to get into it if we're still in the intro sort of phase, but as I was gonna get into later, I've sort of been coming to this realization over and over again recently that words do matter. They're not just like empty sounds out in the void. They actually shape your brain, they shape your consciousness, and they shape your action.
Ooh,
Um,
that's
you know,
true.
from a Western philosophical standpoint, if we're trying to make
Yeah,
distinctions.
which is what I was excited to have you here, because I know the Western side of philosophy can get very deep, and I think you're a perfect representative, because I think as we're going to discuss, because I want to get to know your background, I know that philosophy has played a humongous role in your life.
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't even be alive if it weren't for philosophy.
Mm.
Um,
But what were you saying? I'm sorry to interrupt.
no worries. Um, Reminds me of Aristotle. Basically, you have to make sure that your thoughts become your actions, and your actions become your habits. Your habits become your personality, and that becomes you. So you have to watch it very careful from the beginning. Cultivate the Western version of the middle path.
Yes.
uh,
Yeah. Which nowadays, Stoicism is extremely prominent, especially during these times of the pandemic. A lot of people are getting back to the Stoic teachings. And that is very similar to a lot of the Buddhist ideals. I don't know if you would agree.
I would agree, and I guess I also want to go back to something I said earlier, which is that I no longer truly believe that there is a clear distinction between Western and Eastern thought.
Mm.
I think they both sort of like originated in the same sort of way.
Oh, yeah.
And the realizations that the philosopher or the Buddhist arrive at the highest level are the same. Like the Zen master is no different than the philosopher king, to me.
Who mentioned the philosopher king? Is that attributed to a certain philosopher?
That's an idea from Plato. Basically, the philosopher king would be the one who mastered philosophy, and he would pretty much rule over society in a benign way. Okay, barring the whole ruling thing and all of that, the highest level a philosopher can get to me is the same as a Zen master, just different speech patterns.
That idea of a benign ruler, it's actually in the Buddhist teachings too. I don't know if I'm sure you know the life of the Buddha, but one of the predictions when he was born is that he was either going to be a Samma Sam Buddha, meaning a big Buddha, a harmonious, fully awakened Buddha, or a Dhammacakka Raja, world attorney. Wheel turning monarch, and the wheel that he's turning is really just ruling according to experience rather than existence. And it's because the existence comes about in the Buddhist idea because of emotions. And when someone has eliminated the emotions, they've eliminated the idea of existence, and thus they're living according to experience. And a monarch who leads by experience rather than existence is a benign, a harmonious, loving, caring, wise king. And who he pretty much in the sutras, they say that he just walks over to each kingdom. Each kingdom says, "Oh my God, you're here. Hell yeah, take over." And they all like give him the reins because they know him. And so it's interesting. I really haven't heard of the philosopher king, but that popped to my mind.
Yeah, there's all these similarities that I find in the thoughts of like Western philosophers and some Eastern thoughts that, like I say, like the distinction seems artificial to me. Like this is that and that's that. You're already defining and limiting what things can be.
Yeah,
the truth is just the truth.
Yeah,
Very simple.
definitely. Reality can't be really categorized, and any attempt to categorize it is only a categorization, which is, I think, what you're trying to say.
Right. Yet at the same time, let me go back to that and say
The importance of categorizing.
The importance of categorizing and words and why they do matter, because they sort of define your consciousness. And as a finite being, as a person with human faculties, it's not like we're omniscient, right? It's not like we have perfect knowledge of everything going on everywhere all the time. Like, I don't know how the atoms are moving over, like, in the middle of the ocean, you know? Like, I don't know that. All I know is what's within my field of vision. My senses take in the sensory perception, and then my brain, my consciousness tries to process it. And in that sense, because I am finite, it has to limit it so that I can process it.
To make sense of it, yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy we talk a lot about on the podcast. His name is Robert Anton Wilson, but
Right.
he would always mention reality tunnels. Your reality tunnel is basically what your perceiving apparatus can pick up. And because if you picked up all the signals possible, you would just perceive chaos. So because of that, and based on your programming and your conditioning, you pick up certain signals and leave out what is not according to your programming. And so you're basically saying all you can really know is what's going on through your own reality tunnel.
Yeah, although I do think the purpose of your life is to try to expand that tunnel as best as you can. And again, through words, you mentioned Stoicism. Something that the Stoics brought up is that the obstacle becomes the way.
Yes.
It isn't something to try to get past. It is something to live through. Like, I know, Buddhism isn't my expertise, but I do know that Siddhartha was a man.
Yeah, he was human.
I do believe that part to be necessary. I don't think that's something you can get rid of. I know sometimes people want to be like, okay, existence is suffering. Let me just transcend it and escape through enlightenment. But I don't think that's what enlightenment is at all. I think that fails to. That's a form of escapism. That's not a grasping of truth.
That's a very Mahayana perspective. So you know the two schools, the two main schools, right? I mean, there's really three if we include Tibetan. But you know the Mahayana school and the Theravada school, right?
To some degree.
Yeah. So the Theravada school, that Thera means elder, Vada is like a way. So it's the way of the elders, the ones who wanted to keep the original teachings of the Buddha that he laid down in his monastic code. And then the Mahayana group, they wanted to relax some of the rules and go ahead, and so that would allow more of the lay people to be able to practice at the highest level. And they came to a disagreement. They decided to vote on it. The bigger school won. And so, but then which was the Mahayana, Maha means great, Yana means vehicle. And the Theravada, the older school, they said, well, that's fine. You guys can definitely, you guys won the ruling. You can do what you like. We're just going to go ahead and keep the original teachings. So what they did is they formulated the idea, the Mahayana, that they didn't see nirvana any different than samsara, everyday life. So they were saying that the Theravada, the older school, was really escaping to nirvana. They're kind of being selfish, they would say. Whereas they saw that the point wasn't to escape what we normally call samsara or suffering, but it was to live within it, but not be moved by it, if we can say. And so what you said, it reminds me a lot of what their ideal is.
Yeah, I like, as far as the titles go, the awakened one fits that, because you're not sleeping, right? Sleeping would be to escape.
Yeah, that's true.
But you are walking through life, and you're awake. I guess that's also something I wanted to touch on the podcast, which is that, again, back to words. this reminds me of something that like Wittgenstein would say. Wittgenstein was a philosopher in the 20th century. He sort of focused on logic.
Was he like a linguistic philosopher?
Yeah, he kind of did some linguistics, yeah. But he's very famous for saying, whereof one cannot know, thereof one must be silent. So,
hey, sadhu. That sounds legit.
yeah. So basically everything that there is can be said. And you're not doing any sort of lying. I don't even know how to express this. You're not tricking anybody by putting words to describing things, right? At the same time, your perception or your perspective is limited, right? If I am standing in front of a square and there's like a circle behind it, I'm gonna say, oh, there's a circle behind the square. But if you're standing to the side, you're gonna be like, no, the circle is to the side of the square. None of those perceptions are wrong. They're just perceptions.
It's just a perspective you're taking at the moment.
Right, but they're both valid and they're both true. And because you saw it, you could say something about it. What you cannot say is, oh, there's just light and randomness and divine madness going on in my brain, and I know nothing, and that's enlightenment. It's like I don't believe that. I don't believe it's something mystical. You know, it's like when you were in grade school and you were learning how to do math. At some point, you didn't know what 2 + 2 was, right? But then when you figure out what 4 was, that was a form of enlightenment. You figure out that it added to 4, and like the light of reason made it so that you could see that was the case, like without a doubt. And that's that small example. That's a microcosm, but I think that truth applies to everything we can talk about and everything in the world as it is. That enlightenment and knowing truths about the world is akin to that process, and the things that can be said are true, or the things that are true can be said. Let me rephrase that. The things that aren't cannot.
Yeah, that's I definitely agree with that. So there's a lot of people that try to say that, especially people who take psychedelics. And I know we're going to discuss that, but people who take psychedelics, a lot of times they come back and they say, oh, the truth is ineffable. And a lot of people take that stance with like reality. You can't talk about reality. But the Buddha did not take that stance. The Buddha, one of the ways, so there's something called the salutation to the Dhamma. And it's basically you're revering and reflecting on the qualities of the Dhamma. And the Dhamma normally is known as the teachings of the Buddha. In like the most fundamental aspect, it's Dhamma's experience. And so the teachings of the Buddha was experience. And one of the qualities of the teachings of the Buddha, which is experience, he said, is that the teachings of the Buddha are well expressed in words. And in Pali, it's Suakato Bhagavata Dhammo. Suakato means it is well expressed in words. And that's something that is so different than a lot of these, new age people that say that reality is ineffable. You can't speak of it. And that's kind of something what you're saying that I agree with. And the Buddha, or at least my teacher, Bhante Punnaji, I don't know if I've ever shown you any of his talks, but he's the one that really explained the teachings of the Buddha in like a scientific way, using philosophy, using modern psychology. And he mentioned how that most people that use the word truth, they're really meaning the word reality, because we can speak of a reality, but when we say truth, all there really is sensations. At least that's what the Buddha said. There's no such thing as truth, but there is only sensations. But we can always talk about reality that can be spoken of using words. You're right.
Yeah, but again, we just have to be careful with those words. I keep coming back to that.
No, that's perfectly well said. Yeah. So the formulations of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha are definitely very methodical, and everything is in order. Kind of like a formula that, like you mentioned, 2 + 2 is 4. It has that reason, the type of reasoning behind it. And it's interesting, the Buddha, when he woke up, a lot of people call that the enlightenment, right? Maybe I would call it awakening, and a lot of other people will also use the word awakening, but let's just use enlightenment. He figured something out. He figured the determinism behind the mind. And there was a time in Western civilization called the Age of Enlightenment, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And that time, that was when reasoning and science started taking over. And that's when a lot of revolutions happened against a lot of the religious orders and a lot of the ruling class. And it's interesting that they also call that the age of enlightenment, is because they're using their reasoning and thinking ability to find the deterministic nature of reality, meaning deterministic, not in the sense of predeterminism, like anyone planned it out, deterministic in the way that everything is determined by the presence of the necessary conditions.
Right. In sort of a chain of cause and effect.
Yes.
And figuring out the process how through
certain conditions will bring about certain events.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. So far, everything you say, I agree with. I'm sure we won't be perfect the whole the whole episode, but thank you for giving us that side of the Western philosophy. We'll return to that. I do want to get to tell everybody about how it is that we met. So I'm Mexican American. Are you as well?
I am Mexican American. I am also a dreamer. I'm under the DACA program.
Oh,
just feel it's important to mention that because it does color my experience in this world and in this country.
That's very interesting. I just read today that they're unfortunately not taking any more applicants for the DACA. But can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
It's a deferred action for childhood arrivals. Basically, my parents, they're from Mexico. I'm from Mexico. I was born in Mexico. My dad had trouble making ends meet over there with his family, with us. So he ventured out here to the United States by himself, and then brought us along later on when he had the means. Yes. And because of that, I don't have papers. I crossed the border illegally, and in 2012, Obama created this executive action to give job work permits, and deferred action means you're deferred from deportation because of the special status which they created, which they just called DACA, deferred action for childhood arrivals. People like me who came into this country through no fault of their own, and they're just trying to live their lives out as best they can. Yes. Trying to be American citizens, trying to do their best, and that has really stuck with me because, like, what is America? What is Mexico? What am I as a human being? Like, I know that I exist. I know that reality is. I take it all in, and I'm like just trying to make my way through it. And yet here's this like hard obstacle in front of me, which is just called the border, which is called papers. What the heck is that?
Robert Anton Wilson said that that's where two groups of primates stopped fighting and decided to create a concept.
That's funny because I actually see it as creating a conflict. To me, and again, this is what sort of made me into the thinker that I am. Animals don't care about any of this. No animal is ever worried about a border or papers or anything. They just come and go. They live their lives. You can talk about private property. You can talk about the sovereignty of a nation. But all those things are artificial. Yeah. And having this experience really just taught me that, like, a person from India could get along with a person from Nebraska, could get along with a person from South Africa, could get along with a person from Mexico, and you could just exist in the same place. And if that had been your initial natural state, you wouldn't fight about it. You would just be like, okay, we're all here. It's all cool. Hey, let's get to know each other. But because we evolved isolated, and, humanity was made up of tribes, and nations to me are just an extension of the tribal instinct.
Absolutely.
Because of that, we separate and we think of other human beings as an other. And when you start to think about things that way, borders and nations do make sense. You don't want to let in something dangerous potentially into your area. So yeah, it made me think about that a lot growing up. I really had to question a lot about my existence, which I think it's why I became a philosopher. And what does that even mean, really? I got into a magnet school because apparently, if you speak English well and you're eloquent, you're one of the good ones, right?
Hey, I wanted to ask you, when I looked at your Facebook post, it said you went to Sherman Oaks Magnet or something like that. Where'd you go?
I went to Sherman Oaks CES. And that's a good school.
That's a good area. I work in Sherman Oaks now, and that's probably one of the nicest neighborhoods in the valley, right?
I would say so. I mean, there are other nice areas, but yeah, it's pretty nice.
So it was a good school then, because you said like you spoke eloquently.
Yeah, I came here in third grade. I did first and second grade in Mexico. Third grade, I just came here and I just picked up English like a sponge.
What do you think led to that?
Just again, this feeling like I just had to survive. Like my dad was working, right? He wasn't in school with me. My mom couldn't help me. My sister was, in her grade. It was just me in third grade by myself. Figured out. But I was sharp. I was a sharp kid even in Mexico. So I'm just like, okay, I can do this. And
do you have many memories of Mexico?
Yeah, I have a lot of memories of Mexico. I have a lot of fond memories.
Well, we'll discuss that right now. But you mentioned your teacher. What would they say?
Yeah, my teacher in third grade was Miss Leota. I don't know what it is about her, but she was like the right person for me to cross paths with at the time, because she took a special interest in me and decided to push me to learn. And I didn't even know what a magnet school was, but at the end of the year, she's like, you know what? We're applying for you. You're going to go to SOSIS.
Wow.
And I made it into SOSIS. And that's another thing that changed my life, because I do believe that the educational system as it stands right now takes a lot from Western philosophy. The use of reason, the use of math and logic. Some of it is repetitive. Some of it is like, hey, taking away your creativity to some degree, right? Because it's very rigid, structured way of thinking.
Yeah, I was going to mention.
For me, it was perfect. It was just like what my mind needed at the moment.
So you needed that structure.
Yeah, I needed that structure. I would have gone crazy. In fact, there were a few years. If any of my friends from SOSIS ever listen to this, it'd be funny to hear what they have to think, because I'm sure they remember I was kind of a wild kid. I ditched class, I was kind of rebelling, and I didn't even know why. Just that I just felt different. What am I doing here?
Was there a lot of Hispanic kids in this program?
At SOSIS? Yeah, there's a lot of Hispanic kids. I was the only dreamer I could think of. And at the time, there was no word dreamer. Yeah,
you were the dreamer before the dream was alive.
Right. I was just a wetback. And, that's not to put myself down or anything. That's just...
It's tongue-in-cheek with how silly categories, verbal categories are.
Right. Because that means nothing to me.
Exactly. And we can go back into the topic of language and how, in Buddhism, they say that it's the verbal and visual image that create the emotion. But that's interesting. Yeah, every word is going to create an image, and that's going to create an emotional reaction to it.
Yeah. And then around 9th, 10th grade, I discovered philosophy as a discipline, like as a a hardcore, hey, you're gonna do this, just go for it.
What
all out.
introduced you to philosophy in those grades?
It was strange. It was like a combination of events. First, I had found Hermann Hesse, Siddhartha, right? And I just wanted to read more of him. And he himself mentioned Nietzsche.
Does he mention it in that book? I've read it. I don't remember.
He does not mention him in that book. That book is just like a fiction book of his. Yeah. I think he mentions him in Steppenwolf. He mentions that pain is the highest expression of living. For this wetback kid trying to figure out his life, that really spoke to me. I was like, who the heck is thinking these thoughts? Who is out here saying crazy things like that? I want to study stuff like that.
Can you repeat the quote again?
Pain is the highest expression of living.
That's interesting. I like
that. Why not joy, right?
Yeah, unless, I guess, if you're asleep, it's joy, but if you're awake, it's pain.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And around the time I found that, I had this teacher, Mr. Gershon. He was my favorite teacher at that school, man. He was really old. Yeah. He retired like the next year. I think I was like part of his last class.
Wow.
But he introduced me to Western philosophy by introducing me to Socrates and Plato and the main three, the Greeks, the Sophists, all of those guys. And like, he really challenged me to not just, oh, you're a clever kid. Oh, I'm sure you could come up with something smart ass to say. It's like, no, really think about it. Like, like question it.
It sounds like he was like your first Zen master.
That's a good way to put it. Never thought about it that way.
The Zen master won't take any bullshit answer. They want you. First, it has to be sincere, it has to be authentic, and it has to be spontaneous. Yeah,
he definitely challenged us. I don't know if others had the same experience I had with him, but I went to his classroom for lunch and nutrition. They had 2 breaks at that school.
Yes,
and he would just talk to me about philosophy, and like it was really cool. I had never had a grown up question me in that way or challenge me in that way, even though other teachers had challenged me, but it was still like within the structure of, okay, get good grades. It's like, he didn't care about grades. He absolutely did not care.
Wow.
Which is not to say he didn't check your homework, but it was just, I'm trying to develop your mind, kid.
Yeah. He wants it to go deeper than a piece of paper.
Right. And that's where I caught the bug. Fast forward a few years later, I met you in a philosophy class in community college.
Yeah. So let me ask you. So that's where that's where I met Ivan at a philosophy class, which I want to discuss. But so did you finish high school and then immediately go to Los Angeles Valley College where we met?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I did. My plan was to try to be a doctor. Yes. I don't really know why I wanted to do that. I think it was just like the challenge of learning medicine.
Yes.
Like, it seemed like an intellectual challenge.
Yeah.
Apparently I wasn't up for it because I'm not a doctor. But yeah, I still wanted to do philosophy, even though I was, taking chemistry and biology classes. I'm like, no, I need this in my life. And I met Professor Zach Noor.
Yes, shout out to Professor Zach Noor. He's an incredibly special individual, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. When you see him, he has this aura around him. A very open-minded, charismatic person.
An extreme, like he has the personality and like you said, this aura where I feel like all animals would just come around him and surround him, kind of like like Snow White.
He is like Snow White.
I'm
sure he would appreciate us saying that about him.
I'm gonna send him. I'm gonna send him this episode. I sometimes email him, so I'm sure he'll enjoy this. But one of the things about Zach Noor that really impressed me is that, one, his incredible patience, like the highest level of patience that I've ever seen, and his way to really I want to say regurgitate, but that sounds like bad, but really regurgitate what you just said in a much more eloquent and meaningful way, but it's exactly what you meant. I don't know if that's something you caught on from him.
No, I definitely noticed that he doesn't write you off. He takes the time to listen to you, and he teaches philosophy 101, and he knows all like the basics of Western, but he's also the only teacher there, or the only professor there who teaches Eastern philosophy. So he really does have this like well-balanced, well-rounded out perspective where he's just trying to understand things himself. And as a professor, I think he's really good, but I think he's even better as a philosopher.
Yeah. As a professor, that being so well versed in Buddhist, or I'm adding a lot of like making Buddhism special, but in Eastern philosophy, is that he's not taking anything seriously. He's not grasping or personalizing anything. And because of that, he can teach philosophy, both Western and Eastern, to the highest level, because he's not taking anything. It seems like he's not taking anything seriously. And I mean that in like a good way. So yeah, you're right. So that semester, it was, I believe, the second semester that he had created the Asian philosophy course. Like you mentioned, there was no Asian philosophy course before he got there.
Yeah.
And so what semester was that when you took the Asian philosophy course?
I think I had already been at Valley like a semester or two. I'd already taken like 2 courses with him, Philosophy 101 and something else.
Maybe like European philosophy? Yeah,
something like that. So like I already kind of knew him, but that class, when he taught about like the Upanishads and all these other things that
Taoism,
that you wouldn't think of, you would just, I don't know, he really blew my mind. It was a great class to be in, and it was great to meet you there, and that we had this shared experience.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because I've never knew that it had such a tremendous effect on you as well. So you're saying that class was very transformative?
For me, yeah, but also kind of not, in that I was already into philosophy. So to me, it was more of that, but it was transformative in like taking it with him.
What do you think about him that made that experience more transformative?
I think it's just the patience, man. Like I never had a professor who was like, all right, let's just do this line by line. Let me put this up on the board. This line right here. What does the whole class think? Very calm, very like really taking the time to dissect it. Like it was really good.
It's high level, huh? I remember, you mentioned all the events in your life that led to one thing to another, to another, to another, right? It seems like they're all necessary. Would you say that?
I would say that in retrospect.
Okay,
it's hard to see that as it's happening. But yeah, like I guess all of that happening in that way was what allowed me to get into UCLA. If my life hadn't been the way it was, these events that I just mentioned, I wouldn't have studied philosophy at UCLA, and I wouldn't have graduated, been the first in my family to graduate. So that really means something to me, and that's why philosophy means something to me special in my life. Because there was a time where, before that, I was very suicidal. I was very, like I just didn't want to exist. I was suffering because I was alone in this big country, and my parents just trying to survive. I love my parents, but I don't know if I would have made the same choices. And, that's not to judge them or anything.
Yes.
It's just a different perspective of what they had and what I have.
Yes. Different reality tunnels as well.
They didn't go through my experience, but I didn't go through theirs. But knowing my experience, I would never put my kid through this.
Yes. Very hard, I would imagine. Well, the reason I brought up about how everything was necessary is that, during elementary, I was very, I just mentioned this recently. So really very quickly, I in third grade, I did really good in the standardized scoring and testing, and that they put me in the fourth grade. I was in a half fourth, half fifth grade class. But then when the test came around, I'm like, peace out. I don't want to do this. So I just filled in whatever. And then in the fifth grade, because of the scoring I did in the fourth grade, instead of going to PE, I had to go learn to read or something. And even though I already knew that and like knew I was high level. So in the fifth grade, I said, no, I got to try on these tests or else they're going to take away PE from me again. So I did really high. And so they tested me for the gifted program. And, but I messed it up because I didn't like wearing my glasses, and there was this little test where you had to put the blocks in order, a sequential order, just based on the pictures. And one of the blocks I couldn't see the rain because my vision was so bad, and so it took forever to do that one. And at the end, I didn't even get it right just because I didn't see that block. And so I got put in with the other not so advanced classes. And I would always do good on tests and not good I would never do my work. And so I dropped out of high school, and I didn't get my GED until years later. And then once I got it, my adult school teacher gave me the confidence to go ahead and try community college. And so I went, and when I got there, I was crashing classes. And one of the classes I decided to crash was Asian philosophy. And I remember like thinking I had made plans to crash history. And then that morning I saw that Asian philosophy was at the same time across the hall. And I could crash that. And in my head, I'm like, hell yeah, I want to learn about Asian philosophy. Let me go in there instead. And I remember the first day, Professor Noor, the whole first class was on the question, what is a pen? Do you remember that? The whole first class of that semester was asking and dissecting the concept, what is a pen?
Right. Which is like the basis of all philosophy, right? What is?
Yes. And it blew my mind. I'm like, after that class, I remember thinking like, did we really just spend the whole class on this question?
This is what a community college education gets me. Now I'm questioning the existence of pens.
Yeah, so it was pretty crazy to me. Like I had never encountered something like that. Like I've never, growing up as a Catholic with Mexican parents, asking questions is not allowed usually. You get in trouble for asking questions. So this was very interesting. And the reason I brought up my scholastic career up to that point is that if I got into community college earlier, and then let's say I didn't drop out and I went right away after high school, I would have been there too early for this Asian philosophy course to even exist at that point. So it's just so interesting.
We never would have met.
We never would have met. This Underground Dhamma podcast would have never been recorded. So it's so crazy to think about these coincidences, and on this podcast, me and Joanna, we always laugh at coincidences because we start seeing the more and more coincidence we see, the more and more we interpret it as synchronicities. And we joke about how it's the rationalist materialist that has a mantra that says it was only a coincidence. It was only a coincidence. It was only a coincidence. So it's so interesting to see all these coincidences / synchronicities. Another synchronicity / coincidence, we have the same birthday, the same date, month and day at least.
That's crazy to me. So yeah,
it's
April 30th. Yeah,
and we're both, as you said earlier, wetbacks. Although I guess the only difference is I guess I'm not a dreamer, even though I am asleep. But we're both Mexican American. We have the same birthday. We somehow collided in this Asian philosophy course that was pretty much at its birth. It wasn't there before. I think it was the second semester. So these are also interesting. Like just the necessary conditions had to be present.
Like I said, the obstacle is the way.
yeah, definitely. It's we can't escape it. We have to start where we are. So another coincidence, Ivan, another reason why you have been so influential in my life is that I don't know if you remember, but that history of not doing any homework or classwork, it continued in college for me. And he would teach us every week. I think we started Professor Noor, and I apologize to Professor Noor. Now I know that a kid who doesn't do their homework is very insulting to the professor, in my opinion. But he was so extremely patient with me. But he would teach us about Confucianism, and then I think it went into Taoism, and then we got into
AlanWatts,
Hinduism, then into Buddhism. And during the Buddhism, he assigned an essay by AlanWatts, which, by the way, Ivan, I don't know if you know, but we went over that essay, me and Joanna, on like episode 5 or 4. I don't even remember now.
I remember that essay.
Well, I remember that essay now because of you, because I remember he would make us get into groups and discuss the work. And I remember you asked me, hey, Juan, did you do the homework? Did you read the essay? And I said, nope. And you said, please read the essay. I want to know what you think. And so I'm like, all right, I guess I will read the essay. Well, Ivan, that essay blew my freaking mind. It destroyed everything I had, the matrix I had created. It destroyed it. What do you remember about that essay?
I remember the gist of it. To me, that essay was not as. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay it or anything, but I had been in philosophy for a few years. I'm like, okay, this is my stuff.
So to you, I live for this stuff. He was communicating a reality that you were already swimming in.
More or less. But it is a good essay. I'm not trying to downplay it. It just wasn't as shocking to me. I did want to hear your thoughts, but I remember that experience that you're talking about, Juan. Like I remember very distinctly. You were sitting at the side of the room, just kind of with this like, man, I'm not gonna do anything attitude.
Yes.
Yeah, you were straight up looking like a badass there, but you hadn't done your homework. And I'm just like, Juan, what do you think? And I remember that he gets into the discussion about colors and how even limiting naming colors, right, is limiting because the spectrum itself is a spectrum.
Yes.
It's not defined, delineated colors. Hey, here's red, here's green, here's blue.
That's right.
It's like no, it's just a spectrum, and at any wavelength you could find a new color. Maybe if you find like a micro wavelength or something like that. So he was sort of challenging you to do that. And I remember you sort of kind of pushing back on me, telling me like, no, man, there's colors.
Sounds like the deluded Juan I used to know.
and I just remember thinking, this is really fun. This is funny. I do hope he reads it.
Oh, yeah.
That experience stuck with me too.
That's funny, dude. I had forgotten about that. But that makes sense, me looking back, because the fool is always going to be so sure, right?
And I don't think you're a fool.
I'm sure I was a fool.
Both sides were right. I think there are colors that you can name and there are colors that you can't name.
That's true. But the one who says no to one of those possibilities is definitely the fool, because no possibility is absolute. But that you should never just hold on to one perspective.
Right.
So I went ahead and read that essay. That shattered my reality. I had never heard someone speak like that. We went through Confucianism, and that to me was boring. Do you remember Michael, who was the president of the Philosophy Club?
I remember Michael very well. Shout out to Michael.
Shout out to Michael. He was cool. He was really cool. But one thing there's a few things that I remember that he said that back then I didn't think anything of it, but now it's very interesting. One thing he said when we're discussing samsara, he's like, who wouldn't want samsara? I want to keep coming back over and over and over and learn more and more and more.
Yeah. No, I was definitely on his camp on that just for the fun of it. I remember the class split into this like, hey, we're for nirvana, and then hey, we're for samsara, but really we're not really for samsara. You guys just don't understand that samsara is nirvana. Hey, let's do this. Life is awesome.
Yes, I remember it would get pretty interesting. That was fun. Those classes were fun, man.
Yeah.
And then there's Professor Nora just helping each team get their ideas out in a perfectly clear way.
I do recall catching a glimpse of Professor Nor when we were having those debates, just kind of like lay back a little and just like, this is fun too. Like you can see he was enjoying himself just
with that
listening to these kids argue about samsara and nirvana.
He always had that little Buddha smirk, huh?
Yeah, he's happy when there's a engaging thought being discussed.
Yeah, with us, we're probably just arguing our points. With him, he's probably seeing people's minds get open and open and open.
Yeah, he's seeing us grow like a true teacher.
Yeah, it's very, very, very deep. Now, I probably shouldn't say this, but one of my security questions is like favorite teacher. It's definitely Professor Nor.
Right.
At least his name is hard to spell.
Spelled a weird way, right?
Yeah. So there we go. So even if people know, good luck trying to hack it.
Yeah.
But because at that point, like I said, we had learned Confucianism. Michael really liked it. He liked. I remember him and Ani, who was the vice president. She was really sweet and very intelligent. She almost didn't like. From what I recall, she almost didn't like Confucianism. So it was nice to see them go back and forth. I think she may have seen it as like a little too patriarchal.
And it is. he sets out and defines a patriarchy. It's a patriarchal system. I can see why people don't like Confucius. I kind of, some of his premises, I'm like, okay, I could see where you're coming from. But yes, there's definitely a huge contrast between someone telling you, hey, this is what it is, kids, and hey, let's open our minds out to the different colors in the spectrum.
Yes, exactly. And then, so that's what I was getting at. So like we went from that to then we went to Taoism, and that was pretty cool because I remember 3 specific books for this class, and I actually read the book. So I did do that homework. I always liked doing the homework where I learned, but I didn't like proving that I learned. I didn't like writing the stuff down that I learned. But I did read those books, and the Tao Te Ching was amazing. That was pretty badass. Which is something that I think you like a lot, right? Don't you appreciate Taoism?
I do, in like an abstract way. Not that I've deeply studied the Tao Te Ching. I just listened to what's it called? A Chill Step remix on YouTube of it.
Oh, nice.
It's pretty good.
From AlanWatts? Or just the Tao Te Ching?
Yeah, just the Tao Te Ching, yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna look that up. I've been really into a lot of like lo-fi remixes with like spiritual or at least Eastern books. It's really nice.
Yeah, I guess the main tenet that I take away is form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. That one knocked me back. See, like I say, I'm swimming in it and it's my lane, but no, they knocked me back too. These little morsels of truth that we go on collecting.
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead. No, please.
As far as form being emptiness and emptiness being form, it sort of taught me that there's like a dichotomy in everything we do, right? The Tao Te Ching draws heavily on it's Taoism, and it talks about the yin and yang, right, of the universe.
I mean, the first line of it is the Tao. He who knows the Tao, or the Tao that can be spoken of, is not the Tao. And then he goes on to write a whole book about it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I guess that's my point. I see that I can say things, again, back to words, and those things are true, but they're also not true. It's also just a perspective. It's also just me filling the void with thought.
It's
thought
true.
Is empty.
After I read that essay, my mind exploded. And what I mean by that is all the concepts I held as real, I saw were only concepts, constructs that were created by my own conditioning. And so then from then on, the next book I read was the the Diamond Sutra. And in that Diamond Sutra, it's all saying what you just said. You know, they would say that did the Buddha attain any type of awakening? No, but because we see that he did not, we can say that he attained this like supreme unsurpassed enlightenment. So that's the type of a language it is throughout the whole book, and which is the Mahayana Sutra. And so that really was helpful. It went over and over every concept. It was that, and it would allow you to free from the yes or no type of reality. After the Taoism, we went into the Upanishads, and we learned about, you know, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. That was cool too. Did you get anything from that?
Yeah, I sort of got this parallel between that and like I don't know if you know about the pre-Socratics, but there's this pre-Socratic philosopher called Heraclitus.
Yeah.
He's the one who says you cannot step into the same river twice.
Yeah, perfect.
Because everything's flowing.
Yes.
So one of the Upanishads talks about like the fire of existence. All of existence comes from this fire, which it ascribes us to Brahma, and says that Atman is Brahma, like your spirit is the fire or a part of it. And that one kind of knocked me back too. There's a lot of parallels in Christianity, right? Your soul has a portion of grace, right?
Yes.
It's the same concept. And this Heraclitian fire is being the source of all existence, of all that is. Some days I believe in it, but other days I don't. And other days I feel like I'm an atheist. And other days I feel like I'm the most spiritual person in the world.
That's so funny.
And I just keep going back between these like two extremes that I don't really consider extremes. And
it's more like a dance.
It's more like a dance, but it's also just how I live my life. I think when I got to UCLA, actually, we read Spinoza. I don't know if you know about him, but
tell us a little bit about him.
The main idea, the thing that always gets brought up when they discuss Spinoza, it's his pantheism, which is the belief that God is across everything, or we are in God. God being all of existence. So here is not longer Heraclitian fire; it's just God, and God is like clay, and like it's the ultimate clay. It's the clay of all of existence. And it bends and folds itself into being, into us, into you and me, so that when, you know, I'm getting too mystical, and probably, you know, some of my fellow UCLA
yeah, they're all
be like, shut up, Ivan. Yeah, throwing up. Not a strict logician.
Which is what I thought you always were. So I'm happy. I'm like all happy listening to you.
Right. And my everyday job is a software developer.
Yes, so we're gonna get to.
Strict logic every day, if statements, logical operators, stuff like that. You know, you have to be very accurate with that stuff.
Yes.
But in my everyday musings, I tend to go wild.
That's good. So at least you balance yourself out.
Right. And what I was gonna say with that is, like, in Christianity, when Jesus Christ talks about being the Son of God,
yes.
You can take that more as a metaphor, you know, like he's teaching you how to live, in that if you just believe that you are the Son of God, that you are a Son of God, you can attain this sort of immortality.
Yeah. You know, I agree with that. In Buddhism, they talk about something called the deathless, which the deathless, it means amata in Pali. It can be also referred to as immortality. And my teacher, Bhante Punnaji, who passed away, he would always talk about Jesus. Whenever he was asked about Jesus, he would talk about how it was a disciple of the Buddha. And yeah, so definitely I agree with what you said about this immortality. he also, he said that Christianity nowadays is more like they're following the Abrahamic idea of God, as opposed to what Jesus was talking about. And Jesus also said that when one time he was going to get stoned, and because he was healing people on the Sabbath, and some of the Jewish teachers, the Pharisees, they got stones to stone him, and Jesus said, many good works have I done in the name of the Father. For which of these good works do you wish to stone me? And they said, not for good works do we wish to stone you, but because you on the Sabbath are working. And so Jesus said, well, if a pig falls into a pit, will you not save it? And then they stayed quiet. And he said, my Father does not rest, and neither shall I. So saying that he's not talking about the same God that the Jewish or Abrahamic idea of God was. So that's just an example that of how my teacher would say that Jesus was actually teaching the teachings of the Buddha, which he did. The Buddha is the one he decided to teach that night of his awakening, after sitting for a long time, and then he was going to think he thought that he shouldn't teach because it was too hard for people to fathom. And then the story goes that Mahabrahma came down to him and asked him to teach, and the Buddha decided, all right, there are some people with little dust in their eyes, so I will teach. And that he said that open are the doors of the deathless, or immortality, for those who have ears to hear and eyes to see. So very interesting that you mentioned about Jesus and immortality and Spinoza.
Yeah, and Spinoza wasn't talking about Jesus. I want to clear that up.
No,
I'm not trying to confuse listeners here.
Especially your UCLA colleagues.
Right. I didn't do the homework.
Yeah, right. You're not me. So you, after that, another part that was very special in our time in LAVC, especially around that time when we took that class. Oh, we didn't even finish. So from Hinduism, we went to Buddhism, and that's where we were assigned to read Siddhartha. That was your second time reading it, or had you already read it a bunch of times?
I read it, 3 or 4 times. I was obsessed with that book. I even gave it to my high school girlfriend.
Oh, really?
So here, read this. You need this. It's good for your soul.
Do you think she ever read it?
I know she read it.
Oh, awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You probably definitely influenced her life for the good then.
I certainly hope so. And if she ever hears this, know that I think about you every day.
Oh, that's sweet. Well, I hope she's well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. That book is very interesting. So that's like a fictionalized story of a Brahmin or Indian gentleman named Siddhartha, right?
Correct. And he goes through his own sort of parallel experience of enlightenment to the Buddha's. And in the book, he actually meets the Buddha, right?
Yeah.
And he walks away from him. Yeah,
I remember he gave him a warning. He said, he said, be careful of being too clever. I recall that. He told Siddhartha, be careful of being too clever.
And this is a very good point, because it goes back to everything we're talking about, right? We're talking about how our words create our reality, how basically thoughts manifest. I think sort of the teaching of the Buddha, and again, with Christianity and faith itself, it's not about knowing it in like a logical way, even though you can. It's about having faith. And what the Buddha tells Siddhartha there is that I'm not trying to tell these monks something true or clever in itself, right? I'm trying to liberate them. I'm trying to help them. So in that sense, it doesn't matter what you think of as, you may know that water is a liquid, and when you put a solid on top of it, it will sink to the bottom. You know that. But if you have true faith, you could probably walk on water. Now I can't walk on water.
Yeah.
My thoughts cannot manifest that way. But
Do you
it
think
goes
it's
back to
possible?
this idea of faith being like equal to enlightenment, equal to light.
To light.
Yeah. And again, my colleagues and friends who study with me will hate me for this. But whenever I think of all these things, to me, the words breath, the words love, the word light, the word truth, and the word knowledge are all the same. They're equal to me. They all point to Heraclitian fire. They're all talking about the same thing. They're just different expressions of it. So yeah, to tell Siddhartha, hey, I'm trying to liberate them, is the same as, hey, I'm dying for your sins. It's the same as, I found the Philosopher's Stone. It's the same as, I found the truth, Eureka.
Very interesting.
Like, is there a logical way I can prove this? And with a logical formula that a UCLA professor will approve of? Probably not. Probably not. But I do believe these things to be the same. Grace is the same as enlightenment. Soul is the same as love.
By the way, you mentioned walk on water. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, why not?
Good. We're on the same page. So when we got to Buddhism, we read Siddhartha, which in that book, another thing that I remember vividly is, he met the mistress Kamala, right? And he learned about the world of sensuality. He indulged in the senses pretty much, right? He indulged in the senses, and that it's like he experienced the two extremes that the Buddha experienced, which was the life of hedonism in the beginning, and then life of asceticism right before he awakened.
Right. I think that was Hermann Hesse trying to draw the parallels again. Yes. But yeah, what do you think of that? That synchronicity, that the enlightened being must be like first, mired in the muck.
I think it seems to be part of the formula, because people, if we look at it from an evolutionary standpoint, we're programmed to go after pleasure, right? All the things that bring pleasure, all this are the sensual experience of pleasure is usually something that will help us survive, or at least evolution has programmed us, right, programmed us to try to help us survive.
Biologically, before it reaches higher consciousness, the only two things that are driving a being, an animal, are pain and pleasure.
That's right. And so I think we're naturally, always attracted to it, and so we want to experience it. And then not only do we want to experience it, we want to experience it to a degree where it's everlasting. And so we try to fill our lives with pleasure as much as we can at every moment. My teacher used to say that's why we wear headphones everywhere. We want good music, we want good TV, we want pleasure through all the senses. So I think it's natural in the human condition for them to seek pleasure. And then after I think he even has a kid with the mistress Kamala, and then he goes off. He leaves them, doesn't he? And goes off to live as a hermit with the other hermit.
Yeah, he does. And then the Kamala dies, and the kid finds his way into the hut.
Yeah.
And Siddhartha becomes attached to the kid.
18 years.
Yeah.
I reminded of Kanye. But yeah, so he goes. And one of the things that was cool is that Siddhartha used to sit by the river, and he would he kind of drew a parallel, I think, between the river and the river of his thoughts and sensations. And through that experience, he was able to wake up in the book, attain some sort of enlightenment. Is that how you recall it?
Yeah. Well, it's the river, but it's also like, the way I interpret it is that, like, there are two sides of the coin, right? You can either let go of attachment or become attached to everything, but not one thing in particular. And that's sort of like the lesson I feel you get when because he has this friend, right, who actually did follow Buddha and the Buddha's teaching, and wears the robes of a monk, and then he meets Siddhartha later on in life, and then he tells him the opposite teaching of of the Buddha. He tells him, "I love that rock over there, and I love the air, and I love everything." It's like, wait, love is attachment. The Buddha teaches us against attachment. But here you are looking like an enlightened being, like, because that's how he describes him, right? And then he tells him to like kiss his forehead, and the second that happens, it's like he can tell, like, okay, you're not kidding, this is real. I've just been too dogmatic about letting go of my attachments, that it itself has become an attachment, whereas you're attached to everything and yet to nothing.
Oh, so Siddhartha, he was helped by his friend?
No, his friend was helped by Siddhartha. Siddhartha had this by himself.
I see.
Like, by being by the river and this experience with this kid.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was his last test. That's the way I interpret that.
That's interesting. I haven't read that book in a long time, but I remember it's one of the, at that point, I didn't read a lot. I didn't like it. And that was one of the only books I read. So very, very cool book.
What didn't you like about it?
Oh, what didn't I like about reading?
No, that book.
Oh, that book, I really liked it.
Okay.
I didn't like reading before that. So that was one of the first books that I actually read. And I should give a lot of credit to Professor Noor. He got me to read a bunch. Professor Noor and you got me to read a lot in that class. It was so interesting. But during that time, after we read Siddhartha, that's when they assigned the AlanWatts essay, and that's when you asked me to read it. And yeah, it was amazing. And we had a philosophy class. I remember they came and they announced it, that they're going to have a philosophy club. And what was your memories and experiences in philosophy club?
Well, I became the president of that club.
Yes. The following semester, right?
The following semester. The previous semester, Michael was the president, and he was really good. Like, he would come up with topics that I thought were very provocative and worth discussing.
Yeah.
And I really liked that there was a place where some people went in there with the idea of like, oh, I'm so smart, I'm so clever, I know everything.
Yeah.
But that didn't matter, because like once you got there, it's like everyone's gonna question you.
Yeah.
No ego stands up to scrutiny. Yeah. If you don't know, you don't know.
And we had some cool chaperones, right? Who were the chaperones?
It was Professor Noor, Professor Placencia, and Professor Pallotti. But
and one more. Who was the older gentleman? He was real cool.
Oh, Professor Devendorf.
Yeah, Devendorf.
I have stories about him.
That's for the after show.
That's for the after show. Yeah, he was a wild professor.
Yeah,
he grew up he was alive during the 60s and 70s. So
yeah,
let it suffice to say that.
He always seemed very fierce, and like he was kind of scary. And I remember, the first semester, that was my impression of him. And then I, after I got introduced to Zen, I read the Diamond Sutra, and then I read The Power of Now. And then I read this two books by AlanWatts. One is called This Is It, and the other was called The Wisdom of Insecurity, which that book finished. That cooked me. That book cooked me. that completely, after my mind was shattered by the essay, that book like reshaped it in a way where it can include anything. And I believe then later we had some experiences with psychedelics, and which we'll talk about in a moment. But I remember I went back to the philosophy club, maybe like after you were already in UCLA. I went back to the philosophy club, and I came back transformed. I was transformed in my way of thinking. I wasn't that, I know you didn't like when I called myself ignorant or like a dumb kid, but I was dumb because I thought I knew it. I came back knowing that I knew nothing, as which philosopher said that? I think Socrates.
Yeah.
So I came back knowing I knew nothing, which allowed me to discuss anything.
Call him the OG.
The OG out of Greece. And I remember I went back and, we had these, like, I think it was when Anna was president. You remember Anna, right?
Yeah, shout out to Anna. She became the president of the Philosophy Club, and she and I actually had a few classes together at UCLA.
Dude, that philosophy club. Where did Michael go to after there?
I don't know. I think he went somewhere out west, out south.
Well, a lot of these, at least the presidents, they all went off to like high degrees, high achievements. So shout out to Anna. She was very, very passionate in her ideas. And I remember we used to get into it. And I even when I came back transformed, I was still deluded. I think at every point I'm still deluded, just a little less. But I remember we would have these interesting discussions, and now I would give my perspective. And then Professor Devendorf started like being very friendly, and so I think he approved with what I would say. So it was interesting too, from the first year in philosophy club where I saw him as very fierce. The last year I was there, he was extremely friendly. So it was cool. I kind of got to see the side that I guess you were always saw, because you were always friends with him, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk after the podcast. And I remember even at one point I told them that I wasn't going to be able to attend the philosophy club anymore because I had to work on those days. And he got very sad, and that was very touching to me. It made me feel like, oh man, this gentleman who I see in a high regard values what I have to say. So that felt good. And so you went to, after the philosophy club presidency, you went to UCLA?
Yeah, that was like my last semester at Valley College, and I got into UCLA, and that's where I went.
What were you majoring in?
I wanted to major in biochemistry and minor in philosophy, but just based on like the credits I had and all of that, I was only allowed to major in philosophy. They told me if I did a bunch of other work, I could get both. But at that point, I needed to get out. I needed to start paying bills. I needed to stand up on my own.
Yeah.
Also, I was with my girlfriend, and we are trying to figure out a way to make our lives, or a way to make our way in the world.
Yes.
She at the same time was still going to Valley. Well, she stopped working. She stopped going to Valley, started working while I went to UCLA. And then as I was graduating UCLA, she got into UCSD, which, is the reason why I now live in San Diego, because we moved out here so she could attend school.
Yes. Shout out to Natasha.
Yes.
Yeah, I met her in the last year when you were philosophy club. She was also always very helpful. I remember thinking like, I don't know if this girl even likes philosophy, but she's very helpful to Ivan.
No, she likes philosophy. I consider her a philosopher too. Shout out Natasha. I love you.
That's cool. I guess I never got the opportunity to really have philosophical conversations with her.
Yeah. If you ever sit down with her, she'll have one. She'll discuss Kant. She loves Immanuel Kant.
Oh man, I recently was taking some online classes, and I took another course with Professor Noor online, and the Kant, the section on Kant was very good. There's a lot of interesting parallels to Buddhist teachings with him. But so that year when you were president, you then the next year you went to UCLA. You wanted to originally you wanted to major in biochemistry, but you ended up finishing your degree in UCLA with a philosophy degree. What interested you about biochemistry?
Again, the intellectual challenge, and I do feel like that field has a lot to offer humanity.
Oh yeah. It's, I mean, if you understand biochemistry, you can understand reality.
Yeah.
The problem. Go ahead.
It's a deep part of reality. Yeah. That's part of it. And I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to. I don't really understand. I mean, I kind of do and I kind of don't. Like, I consider myself a philosopher, like, because of my experience and everything I went through in that sense. Like this is my main discipline. This is my main subject. This is where I'm always going to be working in, But I think I wanted to step outside of that, and I wanted to like do something to like help people, while at the same time, like, okay, it's a profitable career. Tired of being poor.
Yeah. No, I feel you.
No one likes philosophers.
We can't all be like Socrates, huh?
Yeah.
So
it was that, but I guess just reality just wanted me to focus on this, and I stretched myself too thin. I was driving a lot between my house and UCLA because I didn't live on campus. I was still living in the valley. So by the time I got to school, I was like, okay, I'm kind of burnt out already. LA traffic sucks.
Yeah. How long would it take?
About an hour and a half.
And it's not even that far, huh?
It's just across the hill.
It's crazy. Yeah. LA traffic is insane.
Yeah, you could take the 405, or those who know, there's a little way through Beverly Hills.
That's
but
true.
that place gets full of traffic now too, because of Waze and maps.
Yeah. One of the things I remember, you gave a talk at some philosophy conference, right?
Yes, at Valley College. Yeah,
I remember because I don't know if you invited me or what, but I found out that you were going to give this talk, and at that point we hadn't talked like in a long time. Which, by the way, listeners, me and Ivan, we go long stretches without talking, right?
Yeah.
But every time we do talk, it's like it picks up right where we are. It's like almost like no time or space has passed.
Yeah. Like I know you're grinding, I'm grinding.
Yeah.
No use for words sometimes, but
yeah.
Hey, if you want to hang out, I'm free.
Like the Zen saying says, like, when two thieves in the night meet, there's no need to say anything. Something like that. I'm sure I had like a George Bush moment there. But
that's right. I am a thief.
What was that? Do you remember what you talked about at that philosophy conference?
Yeah, it's sort of again what we've been talking about right now, sort of having to do with the topic of faith. Well, I wanted to talk about knowledge. In philosophy, there are, I guess, a few main branches, a few main pathways you can start thinking about, hey, how to question everything. One of those is ethics. One of those is metaphysics. There's logic. There's political philosophy. And then there's what they call the theory of knowledge.
Epistemology?
Epistemology.
Yep.
So my talk was on epistemology. And the two main traditions within epistemology are rationalism and empiricism. Rationalism is deduction. You know something with certainty if you know the premises and the logical structure of something, right? Yes. If Socrates is a man and all men are mortal, Socrates must be mortal. Because just by definition, by the structure of logic, by the things we just said, it follows from that sentence that this is true, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And then there's empiricism, which, you can think of it as just science. People think of it as like statistical analysis. People think of it as experience-based realizations.
The Buddha, there's a sutra where he goes through all the branches of Western philosophy. And one of them, when he got to empiricism, it's a word called something like akacha vitaka, and that basically means inference based on observation.
That's how I think of empiricism too.
Yep.
Because when you're doing inductive logic, you're inferring. So that's exactly, he got it right. His definition was on the mark. When you're doing rationalism, you're deducing, you're not inferring. That's why it follows with certainty that Socrates will die. Whereas if I tell you, oh, I don't know, 90% of patients, reacted well to this drug. It's like, okay, cool. This is a good drug. You should give it to people.
That's an inference.
But it's an inference. Like most people, it doesn't come with certainty. It comes with likelihood.
Yeah, it's always probability, not truth.
Exactly. And so my talk was about these two things. And basically the point that I was trying to get at was that you cannot have one without the other. And I'm not the first to say it. I'm not even that original. I guess I was feeling clever. I wanted to say that if you're going to adopt a rationalist system, you need to draw your premises from some empirical source, right? Yeah. What is Socrates? What is a man? What is mortality? Oh, you have experience with those things, right? Yeah. That's where that comes from. These aren't just truths in a vacuum. And this is something that Kant said too, that logic is empty. Logic doesn't care. The structure of logic, the logical syllogism, doesn't care what premises you put in there. But they're true based on experience. That's where you draw them from. Where else would you draw them from? And the same goes for empiricism. All of science rests on this premise that like future events will be like past events. But you can't really know that. Yeah, that's why the universe could like straight up just change all the laws of physics in 1 second if it wanted to, and all your science goes out the window. Yeah, that's what likely. I don't think so, but
that's why scientific, understandings are always being demolished and new ones taking place, right?
Yeah, I would say that's part of it. Getting new data definitely challenges older data. So it doesn't follow with certainty.
That's why all we can speak of is probability when we talk about empiricism.
Right. But you still need like a logical premise in there. You still need something that connects all your hypothesis. Data. Yeah, exactly. And it's going to have a rational structure.
Yes.
Right. So my point at that talk was like, okay, anything in rationalism, you need to refer to empiricism. And anything you need to know in empiricism, you need to refer to at least one rational premise. Where do we get actual knowledge from? We're just referring things to things in the void, like we're just talking about the clouds now. What actually grounds it? And my point at that talk was that it is actually faith that grounds it. It is your faith in logic. It is your faith in science. It is your faith that past events will function like future events will be like past events, which is a form of simply just believing, simply just accepting. So
it's like an axiom that you're asking them to take?
Yeah, that talk I was just trying to say that at its highest level, knowledge cannot be differentiated from faith. Like you just accept it.
That's interesting. I need to digest that.
Yeah. Could I be wrong? I don't think I am, but maybe.
Very humble.
Yeah, I would like to be proven wrong and show me the work.
That's how most of our conversations start to get heated.
Yeah, I do recall, this is a little bit off subject.
Yeah, go ahead.
One time we had a heated discussion about whether Buddhism is religion or not.
That's interesting. Like I said, I was deluded at every point in our friendship. It's just a little less and less. So can I tell you whether Buddhism is or what I think now?
Sure.
So how you mentioned that in reality you see no real difference between Western and Eastern philosophy?
Right.
I think that because what that is that I include all religion in that. And I think religion, what it really is a response to the human condition. The human condition is that we look around and we see that we're all going to die. That's what the existential philosophers focus on, right? We're aware that we exist, and we're aware that we're going to die.
Right.
And how does the human cope with this reality? And the humans are governed by their emotions, because based on evolutionary programming, because that's what it'll get you to survive and procreate, following your emotions. And our emotional urges is that we want permanent pleasure. We want pleasure, not just a little bit, but we want it permanently. And then we want to be free of pain. And not only do we want permanent pleasure and to be free of pain, we want eternal life. We want to exist forever. So most religion is based off this human condition, that the humans look around and they see, oh my God, in reality, there is no permanent pleasure. In reality, we cannot always be free of pain. And in reality, we cannot have eternal life. Everyone's dying. Everything dies. Even the stars that live billions of years, they all dissipate, right? So what they do is, most religion try to figure out how to cope with this. And that's why most of the major religions, they create a concept called God, someone who is everlasting. And they create a concept called heaven, somewhere where there is permanent pleasure, free of pain, and eternal life. And, that's why Marx said that religion is the opium of the masses, because they're trying to escape this reality. And now philosophy, I think, most likely they're a little more skillful at trying to deal with this. So I do think that Buddhism is a religion. However, these religions that cope with the realities of life by trying to escape to this hypothetical realm after death, those are called theistic religions. And Buddhism is not a theistic religion, nor is it an atheistic religion. It's actually a humanistic religion. And the humanistic religion is where you use human effort and intelligence to deal with the human problem. And that's what the Buddha did. And so, yes, I do think Buddhism is a religion, but it's also a philosophy. It's also a psychology. It's the truly integrated system.
I don't know why we had that argument years ago, Juan, then, if you were just going to agree with me. Because that was actually my point. I believe, from a different standpoint, like all these things you just said right now, yeah, I agree with that. To me, the points that Buddhism addresses, that all religions address, are death anxiety, a moral compass, and just sort of give life meaning,
Yes.
And in that sense, it has to be religion, because philosophy doesn't do that. Philosophy is not there to relieve your death anxiety. It's just there to question it.
What does existential philosophy try to do?
Existential philosophy, as far as I understand it, is just trying to look at existence as is, human existence. And one of its biggest, sorry, I'm like screwing up words right now. It's late in the day. One of the most, the biggest known existentialist philosophers is Jean-Paul Sartre.
Yes.
And his main tenet is that existence precedes essence, so that human beings are not like, a Professor North's pen, which is a pen that's a thing that's defined. Human beings are sort of just cast into the world. And from there, they have to figure out what they are. They define their essence. So they exist first, and then they are.
So
if that makes sense.
My teacher talked about the existential philosophies, and when he talked about existence and essence, he used the idea of gold. How gold, the essence is gold, but you can shape it into whatever you want. And that's the existence, or it could be the opposite. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say that tracks.
So
yeah, you're not well, existentialism is also Jean-Paul Sartre's version, because there are other versions. There's Christian existentialism, but his version is atheistic existentialism. So there is no God. there's just the void of existence, and he believes that human beings. What did he say? I'm trying not to butcher things.
Don't worry, I already did. I'm already Bush.
Some version of this. They exist for no reason, prolong their existence out of weakness, and die by mere chance.
Death metal. That's what I hear. That's like death metal lyrics.
Yeah, it's pretty dope, but at the same time doesn't give you much in terms of an ethics.
Yeah, this would be a pretty good time. My teacher, everything I talk about Buddhism is influenced from my teacher. And he talked about, there's this famous sutra called the Kalama Sutta. It's really called the Kesaputta Sutta, but people know it as the Kalama Sutta because he spoke it to the people called the Kalamas. And these Kalamas, they would get all these philosophers and teachers to go to their town, and they would all say what their truth is. And so when the Buddha came to town, they went up to him and they said, Buddha, many teachers come here and they say that this is reality, this is truth, and what other people preach is wrong. So how should we know? And then the Buddha said, it is good, Kalamas, to doubt if something is doubtful. You should always doubt if something is doubtful. That's good. And then he says, he tells you, he goes step by step on different ways that you should not arrive at truth. You shouldn't arrive at truth by these means. And the first one is going by the tradition, going by tradition, what your culture, your tribe tells you is reality. You shouldn't go by that. You shouldn't arrive at truth by that. Then he says, also the next way to people try to arrive at truth is by logic, pure logic. And he says, you shouldn't go by pure logic. You shouldn't arrive at truth. And then he goes, another way that people try to arrive at truth is by what I told you, observation and inference, which is empiricism. And he said, you shouldn't arrive at truth by this means because that's only probability. And then there's the school that came about that tried to arrive at truth by transcendentalism, which we can see like Immanuel Kant. They say that the truth is something that we cannot perceive with our senses. The only thing we perceive with our senses is the phenomenon, but there's a noumenon. There's something transcendental outside of the senses. And then he says that the linguistic philosophies came about and said, well, what you're saying is also just a concept. This transcendental truth is just a concept. What really, all that matters is whether a sentence is meaningful or meaningless. And it's meaningful if you can experience it through the senses. If you can't, then it's just a meaningless sentence, like saying that the rabbit is God, or that, something like that. So that's when the linguistics came about, and then came the school of philosophy of pragmatism. They said that the nature of the human being is to solve problems, and so it doesn't matter if something is a meaningful or meaningless. What we should focus on is how to solve problems, and that's how we arrive. If there's a solution to a problem, then we can call that truth. And then the existentialists came about and said, you fools you're worrying about problems that don't matter. The only real problem is that we exist, and we know we exist, and we know we're going to die. That's the only problem. And I believe, do you know Kierkegaard?
Yeah, he is the one who is sometimes called the Christian existentialist. Yeah.
Yes. Why is he was a Christian and then he gave it up. But then at the end, what did he arrive at?
Christianity.
Yeah, because he said you have to take the leap of faith.
Right. Which in itself is like something Jean-Paul Sartre would agree with, which is to live genuine in the world, right? The way you solve that problem of existence is just live your life authentically. And
he had given up religion, but he went back to it because he said that the human being can't really. This isn't a problem the human being can solve, so this is something that God can solve. So all we can do is just take the leap of faith and live our lives that way. And Then wasn't there your boy Nietzsche? Didn't he talk about his solution to the problem of existence was for the Übermensch? No.
Yeah. So I'm actually in the process of rereading Zarathustra for like the 6th time.
Yes.
And I'm at the part where he's talking about the last man and the Superman.
So what is he talking about when he talks about the Übermensch?
He's sort of talking about a being that justifies existence by his very passion, his very acceptance of all his human and animal drives. This is my extrapolation. He's kind of vague on it. Like, what does it truly mean to be the Übermensch? Well, it means that you live beyond good and evil, right? What does that mean? That the actual ethics and laws of humankind don't necessarily apply to you, because what you are the reason why all these ethics and rules of mankind were created, to give birth to like the true genius of all of existence, the Übermensch. So he can live his life however he wants, because that's what it was for. Existence was created for him. He accepts reality, or if things were to occur eternally in the same way over and over, the Übermensch would be the one to say, because I said so, because I willed it thus.
Is that where the title comes from?
The title comes from the character of Zarathustra, who is a prophet, who is telling everybody these things, all these teachings. So he's telling them about the Übermensch, and then after the Übermensch, he's like, okay, thus spake Zarathustra. This is what I said about the Überman. So it's not even that he's the Overman. Yet, I don't know, don't want to get too much into it, but later on in the book, it is my hypothesis that he kind of drops that and tries to be the Übermensch himself. So he's no longer like, I'm the herald of the Übermensch. I'm just going to try my best to be it.
Sick. He went from Silver Surfer to Galactus.
Yeah, in modern speak, yes. The herald of Galactus became Galactus, or tries to. And again, he's just trying to show you a way, because I think he believes that this sort of evolution of mankind is not like something that's beyond the reach of anyone.
Yes.
But it's only attainable by individuals, by special individuals.
So perfect. You described it perfect. So this is where the Buddha steps into this. This is where, according to my teacher and to my own understanding, this is where the Buddha comes in. The Buddha comes in because the problem of existence is because we are taking existence as a reality and not seeing it as a delusion, a concept that we have constructed through this process of perception and conception. And so the Buddha is the human being who evolved to the highest peak of evolution and transcended death. When you realize there's no existence, there's no one here existing, then there's no one here that was ever born. And that means there's no one here that's ever going to die. And so I always like that. Nietzsche at least spoke of this idea, even though he may have not attained it himself. He knew it was possible for the human being to evolve to the highest point of evolution. And that's something I always appreciated about Nietzsche. And that's where the Buddha comes in. And what's interesting in that sutra, where it started out with epistemology, people looking for what truth is, knowledge. The Buddha at the end, he says, so after he's saying you shouldn't do it, you shouldn't arrive at truth by this means, by this means, by this means, by this means. At the end, he says, if you yourself try it and you find that it is good for you and good for others, and you find that it is brings happiness and not unhappiness, and if you find that it is accepted by the wise, if it follows these 3 criteria, then take that as truth and practice it. And it's interesting because he went from epistemology to ethics. He finished with ethics. And these 3 aspects, whether it's good and not bad, whether it brings happiness and doesn't bring unhappiness, and whether it is wise and not unwise, it covers the three activities that Sigmund Freud talked about in the structural analysis of the mind. He talked about the id, which is governed by the pleasure principle, always looking for pleasure and running away from pain. He talked about the ego, which is governed by the reality principle. It can understand reality and is rational. And it talked about the superego that is concerned about being good and always fighting with the id. So the happiness or unhappiness is for the id. The wise instead of unwise is for the ego, and the good instead of bad is for the superego. And it brings harmony to this conflict, and it brings harmony to this conflict within the human being. So that's where he ends. So it's, I always, my teacher's the only one that uses like these philosophical and psychological ways of explaining these teachings. Otherwise, they're just going to be words that we heard the Buddha said and just we repeat it.
Right. He puts them within a modern framework.
Yes. One of my favorite things, one time my Bhante Punnaji, our teacher, he talked about in the practice of meditation that the Buddha taught, which was satipatthana, and it's introspection. And he actually called it systematic introspection. And I remember I asked you once in one of our sessions where we hung out, and you said that if anything you said something to the effect like if anything is worth anything, it has to be systematic. Do you remember that?
I don't really remember that. I said that. It has to be systematic.
You said that if something is going to be not thorough, but if something's going to be, we're going to say something about something, it better be systematic, as almost as if you're leaving no stone unturned.
Maybe I said that. I don't really recall, but I do agree with it now that you're saying it to me.
You're like, I agree with this gentleman named Ivan.
Yeah, smart guy, that guy.
Oh, man. So another reason you had a tremendous influence in my life, and why I say that this underground Dhamma would not be here if it wasn't for you. So one, you got me to do my homework. You got me to do my homework and read AlanWatts. Two, we became really good friends, especially attending philosophy club, and we started hanging out outside of school. And we usually would smoke and smoke cannabis and get into these philosophical discussions.
I'm sorry, Mom.
Sorry, Bhante. Bhante is what we call our teacher monks, our teacher bhikkhus. Then one day you brought up whether I wanted to try LSD. Do you recall?
Is this a trick question? Who's listening here?
Hypothetically, if there's any authorities out there, hypothetically, do you recall this happening?
Hypothetically, let's say I did.
And at that point, you had already been experienced with LSD. Is that correct? Hypothetically.
Hypothetically, yes.
From now on.
I'm sorry, Mom.
From now on, everything is hypothetical.
Right.
If anyone's listening to this in a court of law. But yes, so you were experienced at this point with LSD.
I had a few experiences with it, yeah.
What were your initial experiences with it?
It was in high school. My friends were crazy. Had a crazy group of friends.
These Sosa students get down, huh?
Or they try to. My group certainly did their share of like wacky, crazy things. But yeah, I had a friend who I consider a very close friend. Right now he doesn't talk to me, which is fine. You're allowed to choose who you want in your life.
Yes.
That's totally fine. I wish him happiness and peace.
Yes.
But he is a very smart individual. At that point in my life when I came across him, like he was he was a smart guy. He got into Sosis on his own. You know, he didn't have Miss Leota pushing him.
Nice.
You know, but his parents were teachers, and I actually don't know why I'm going into this.
No,
but
okay.
yeah, he read a lot of philosophy too. Like he was my philosophy bro in high school. His name was Josh London. Is Josh London. And not to out anybody or anything. But,
sorry, Josh's parents.
We sort of just experimented with things because, again, we're just trying to find stuff. I don't. I mean, looking back on it, like I don't do that stuff. I wouldn't do that stuff anymore.
Yeah, same here. Like, I don't think I can do it again. I've only done it once, and I don't think I can do it again. But
I think the drive is to sort of like break through like your normal everyday experience. And yeah, when that happened, when I did that in high school, I went on a hike. I went on a hike to Amir's Garden. I don't know if you know where that is. That's over by in Griffith Park. It's this little hidden park, little garden in Griffith Park, and yeah, man, I was tripping out the whole day during the hike, and I just remember seeing all these colors, all these different patterns of things, and it just made me question, like, you know, it starts out with visuals, and you're like, okay, if my eyes can just be deceived this way, you know, what's to say my nose, my ears, my sense of touch, you know, everything I know isn't being fooled in this way. And, you know, you don't need to get that far to get to that level of questioning, but sometimes some people do.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, it did alter my consciousness.
And that was your first experience?
One of the first that I recall. Yeah. It's also another one with my friend, and yeah, a few more with them,
and they were all similar in what you experienced and about the senses.
Yeah, about the senses and about the way like my mind was working at the moment. Like you're in an altered state, like it's chemically induced, of course, but like you are thinking differently than you normally would.
Hey, but we can also say this reality we call normal reality is also chemically induced, correct?
I would say so. I only call it normal due to, you know,
conventions.
The fact that it's the one you're in most of the time.
Yeah, predominantly.
Yeah.
And so when you offered this out of nowhere, not to make, I'm making it seem like you're trying to corrupt or something. No, but you offered this out of nowhere. And the reason I bring that up like that is because this is not something that I ever looked for or I ever thought about before that, or I ever like when you offered it at that point in my life, I remember thinking like, yeah, that seems about right. That seems about a right thing to do. All right. I didn't have any expectations. I didn't have any expectations to party. I didn't have any expectations to have some deep journey. I had no expectations, nothing at all. And I just some weird comprehension that, yep, this sounds about right. It sounds about the right thing to do. And do you recall that time when we took it?
I do. I recall feeling sick.
Yeah, I remember we had very distinct trips.
Yeah, you were at peace. I was with
you were in
stomach pain. Yeah, I still like saw the visuals and stuff, but yeah, it was not the funnest thing.
Your girlfriend Natasha was there for you, wasn't she? In that moment.
She was. She remembers it very well. She took care of me. She was there for me, and yeah, haven't touched that stuff since.
Oh, really? That was your last time?
Yeah.
Wow. You know, that's interesting. We've had these little moments where, you know, the Asian philosophy course, it was like a little extraordinary than the normal. And then this experience is a little extraordinary, and it's also your last as well as mine. We went to, you said it would be a good idea to go to Balboa Park. We went and we took it there. And I remember we took it, and I think you took double the dose that I did. Is that correct?
Sounds correct, because I was in pain.
Yeah.
Sounds like a bad idea. Yep. Sounds right.
I even remember we went up into the Woodland Hills, which are sick, because later in my life I would spend some time there, and I love those hills. To pick it up, we went to the Balboa Park, we took it, and then at a certain point you started feeling bad. And I remember we got food, but then you were feeling way too bad. So then I just took you home. And
yeah, I remember the food spilling in the car. It was really funny. It was hilarious.
Important. That's very important to this story, because you have no idea how that had that was a certain breakthrough that I would understand later. But what do you remember about the food flying across my car?
I was tripping balls. I couldn't hold on to the food.
Yeah. And I remember as we put it on the dashboard, which is not a good idea when you're driving. So when I made a turn, I just went flying everywhere.
No, but the fact that we did that also made an impact on me, which is like, why are you making bad choices even with something so small? It's just fucking food. Like, that's the realization. You don't need to go all the way to LSD to get, just be more conscious, pay more attention to your everyday dealings with the material world, even if it's with something small.
Wow, that's interesting. So you got that from that experience?
Yeah, that and more times ever since.
Wow.
Yeah, so just don't be clumsy.
When I took you home, I started driving home, and at that point is when I started. I didn't experience any visuals, but I started seeing the mind. I started like getting really introspective, extremely introspective, and just watching what's happening at the mind with the thinking process. And I remember I got home and I just sat in my car for a little bit. Maybe who knows? Time is so subjective that, and you're in that state.
You were actually there 3 days, Juan.
Yeah, that's why I got a ticket, huh? No, so I was there for a while, but I was sitting there and I was just watching my mind, just watching it. And at a certain point, I could see there was two aspects of the mind. One was like a cynical aspect, and the other was like this peace, calm, confident aspect. And I saw the cynical aspect just constantly yapping, and also personalizing everything, personalizing. And then it felt like the cynical aspect kept holding on to everything as itself. And then that little calm, confident aspect was just like quiet and just watching and like kind of like saying like, okay, we'll see. And I remember at a certain point, I wanted to go inside, but then I looked around and I saw the food was all over my car. And then that voice in my head came up. You can't go inside. You have to clean your car. You can't leave this here. And that was just the cynical part of the mind, that I grew up with. And then at a certain point, I had this at that point, immediately almost, I said, no, I don't have to do any of that. It's okay if the food is all over. That's not bad. I can come back and clean it later. It's okay. And at that point, the cynical part of the mind it evaporated. It was nowhere to be seen. And at that point, I was just overcome with this calm, peaceful, silent mind. No more yapping. And I was at that point, I think I hit my breakthrough, and I was so happy. And there was no emotional disturbance at all. And there was this extreme peace, extreme comfort, extreme contentment to like otherworldly levels. And I remember laughing, thinking like, AlanWatts was right. God damn it, AlanWatts was right. There is nothing to worry about. And there is no Juan here. There is no existence anywhere. These were all just like realizations. I wasn't even talking this out. They were just like, silent realizations, we can say, and or silent insights. And I went on, at the starting point, I didn't even know who I was, because there was no Juan anymore. And I remember thinking, Ivan, like, oh, this is what psychosis might be. I guess this is what psychosis is. Did you ever experience anything like that?
Yeah. Nietzsche calls it divine madness. So
Oh,
I have a term that allows me
to make sense of it.
To make sense of it, or just rationalize it.
Yeah, and it was perfectly fine. It was just so interesting. It's an interesting experience, and during that time when there was no emotional disturbances, there was no existential thinking. There was only this extreme peace, and like just all your conditioning and imprints of growing up, they all got dissolved. Just like the ego got dissolved, all the values placed on by the ego are also dissolved, and it was so liberating. And I remember understanding that this is a possibility. It's like another way of perceiving reality that you never would have thought that it was possible in your normal everyday perception. Would you agree with that, Ivan?
Yeah, I think that's right. I do think you can attain that without any chemical means. So,
well, absolutely. That was 9 years ago, Ivan, and it took me so many years to figure out what had happened. So many years, but that gave me the glimpse into the possibility of that type of perception. And I remember I wrote, I couldn't put into words what I was experiencing. And I remember I just told myself, don't worry, even if you had 1,000,000 years to explain this experience, it wouldn't be enough time. And so at that point, I did write, like, I did put words into to paper, but to my phone. And I still have what I wrote down. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. Maybe you have. But this is what I wrote down in that experience about that experience. Okay. I said, this is groundbreaking and meaningless. I am talking about the now, quote unquote. But there is no now, quote unquote. It doesn't make sense, but it is perfectly centered in that very fact, in that void. Life is simple. We overcomplicate it with its own beauty. Life is effortless. All you can do is act, live in the quote unquote now, or Zen, in its awkward beauty. If this whole journey through the cosmos was all for naught, then that is perfectly fine. That is the it, quote unquote. But as soon as you call it, quote unquote, it, quote unquote, then disappears. Everyone laugh. It, quote unquote, doesn't make sense right now, but that's what makes it, quote unquote, so beautiful. This is Zen, but yet it is not. Just laugh. And that's what I wrote. So that's the only way I was able to put it into words, that experience.
Well, that's great, Juan. I definitely agree with that right now. I definitely see that every day. Especially because, like I said, I go through these extremes. Am I a nihilist, or am I a transcendentalist? Am I a cynic, or am I like full of optimism and hope for the future? Like, I think both are true. Like, I can be both, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, it's all within like context, and don't take it too seriously.
Yeah, we can't have problems with paradoxes.
Right.
That's the rule number one. Even when you get to the quantum level, there's paradoxes all over the place, right?
Right, and that's okay,
And that's okay.
It breaks the first rule of logic, right? Something is or isn't, but not at the same time. Whereas in quantum mechanics, good luck telling that to subatomic particles.
Yeah, subatomic thingamajigs.
Yeah, they don't care about your logic.
Yes, and that's what's beautiful. And so this is how I could put it down in words back then, in that moment. It took me many years. It took, after that experience, that's when I went back to philosophy club, and Professor Devendorf was very happy when I would join the discussions. And then after that, one of the most venerable bhikkhus, monks, that walked into my job, Bhante Siddhiniwaza, my teacher, homage to Bhante Siddhiniwaza. He told me about a Buddhist temple, and I went to the Buddhist temple, and I started practicing meditation. I started studying the sutras, and through these studies, I realized what had happened. And then I got exposed to Bhante Punnaji and his teachings and his explanations of reality, or the teachings of the Buddha, and it became more and more clear. So that what I think psychedelics is, and it's not the same for everyone, because as the Zen people say, the only Zen you'll find at the top of the mountain is the Zen that you bring with you. So that doesn't mean that anyone can have take psychedelics and have this like spiritual experience, you can call it. But it gives you a glimpse into a different way of perceiving reality. And usually you just need one other way of perceiving reality to at least open you up. I don't know what you think, Ivan.
No, I think that's definitely the case. Just anything that breaks you from a rigid mold of thought is liberating.
Yeah.
And once you've broken free, you find out a million other ways to think.
Yeah, absolutely. You're actually liberated or free to a certain extent to go ahead and really explore.
Right. But it's like a domino effect. Like once you do one, like that's it. The rest are falling.
Yeah. Nothing's safe.
Nothing's safe. Nothing's really sacred in that it's beyond questioning. Like you're a human being, you're allowed to question everything.
Yeah.
And that's one of like the tenets I try to live by. Like I want to believe that anything is possible, even walking on water, but I'm gonna question everything.
That's fine. As long as no one takes it too seriously.
Right. I'm not questioning in anger. I'm not challenging you personally.
Yes,
I just want to know.
Absolutely. And that's always fair. And the questions are needed, especially in the practice of Zen. They talk about the great doubt, and you have to stir up this great doubt, because everyone is too sure, especially if you're asleep. You're too sure about reality. You're too sure that this is the only reality there is, that you're Homo sapiens walking around, and you exist, and there's a Juan, and there's an Ivan, and there's a job, and there's a girlfriend, and there's we're very sure, most people are very sure that that's the case, which we're not saying that it's not. It's definitely an appearance that is taking place of that, but we can't be. Robert Anton Wilson says you should never ever fully buy into your own BS belief system, and you should never ever buy in fully into someone else's BS or belief system. So I think that's a good way to live your life by.
It's my philosopher's code.
So I think what made that experience be your last experience with psychedelics?
I guess just the fact that I felt sick, and like I was, on my path already. It no longer served any purpose.
That's good. AlanWatts said that psychedelics, as well as like any type of spiritual practice, should be a medicine and not a diet. Is that something you would agree with?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Especially now, like I quit that, right? But throughout the years, like I still smoked a lot of weed.
We probably together.
Right. I didn't like drinking as much when I was in high school. I was crazy again because of like just my outlook in life, and my position. I didn't think I had any choices. I thought I was just gonna have to, Like they made fun of me, saying I was gonna be like a gardener and shit, all the racist shit that you can think of. And like I really took that personally. But then when I transcended that, I'm like, wait, no, that's not true. I don't have to do anything. I can be whatever I want to be.
Is that who I met?
What do you mean?
LAVC?
Kinda. You met a person shedding off that the husk. But right now I'm in the point where like right now in my life, like I quit everything. I don't play video games. I don't watch pornography. I don't smoke weed. I don't drink. I even gave up Coca-Cola. Oh, I miss it so much. But like I think this is what I want to do. It's not just what I think. Like I know this is what I want to do, because when my mind is clear, I'm more about my purpose. I'm more about attaining, little goals that may not be important to the world, but are important to me, and I find meaning in them. And I like that more than just being stoned. Being stoned, was fun. I had a party face, but it's no longer for me. I'm more about just attaining what I believe are things worth attaining.
Yes. And how has that affected your nervous system?
First few days I was bored, just bored, just miserable. I need some dopamine. I need some chemical stimulation. But no, the longer you go on with it, I feel like I'm becoming more of myself and more of who I was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I was just like in my natural state, and I would question things. Like I've always kind of been like this. And there's like a picture that I don't know why I attach so much meaning to it, but I'm with my grandmother in Mexico, and she had like almost like this Russian nesting doll set of like turtles. Like they didn't go into each other, but they were different sized turtles. Made of like some jade stone. And I remember just like I have the vivid memory, but there's also the picture of me just sitting there, like trying to put them in order. Like my mind is the mind that tries to put things in order, tries to bring order to this chaos. And I think I'm becoming more of that by becoming more of who I was.
Very interesting. That's that's a parallel to the Buddha. The Buddha, he gave up his hedonistic life as a royal prince, and then he went to learn yoga from two teachers. They taught him. They told him how to get to the higher levels of meditation, and then he went to practice the extreme ascetic practices with 5 ascetics, and none of that worked, at least to bring all suffering to an end. And then he did recall this experience as a little boy where he was sitting under a tree when they weren't watching him, and he just relaxed and let go, and he got into these jhanas, ecstasies, and he recalled that, and that night of his awakening, he said, "Why don't I just practice that? That is different than everything I've been trying so far, and that was a good, comfortable feeling, and it wasn't based on any sensual stimulation. That good, comfortable, pleasurable feeling is not a bad thing." And so he practiced it, and that's how he was able to calm down his nervous system to the point where all mental activity stopped, and so that he experienced no sensation and no feeling. And he was literally insentient, and he was able to the nervous system kick started again, and mental activity started up again. And that's by seeing how the system rebooted, he was able to see how the mind creates what we call the world and the self, using the sensations and feelings as construction, like bricks. And when the world and the self is constructed, there also comes all the suffering. And that's according to the Theravada tradition. And that's what he called this antecedental concurrence, this Paticca Samupada, normally called dependent origination. So it's interesting that you recall back to your time with your grandmother.
Yeah, it wasn't as deep as that, but I can see what parallel you're trying to draw. Yeah.
You know, I remember once I was learning about this antecedental concurrence, and I went through it step by step. And you told me, you're like, at each step, you're like, yes, yes. So, and I was learning it from my teacher, Bhante Punnaji. I said that, you know, we start unconsciously, we start to construct using sensations and feelings. And then there's a perception of what is constructed. And then we name an image that is constructed with the perception. We name an image. And then we use the sixth sense information to cognize what is perceived and form an object through that cognition. And then there's a feeling based on that cognition, on that cognitive interpretation. And then there's an emotional reaction based on that feeling. And then we personalize this whole process, and especially because of the emotions, we personalize it. And then when we personalize it, at that point, that's the point I had got into. And I remember you said that, yep, yes, I agree. Yeah, that's how they're teaching it in UCLA. I don't know if you remember that conversation.
Vaguely recall something like that. Yeah. It was interesting to see those parallels because one of the things I learned at UCLA was that the mind does have structure. Like it's not this abstract thing that it's not a blank slate where you could just, anything happens, you know. There's actually like layers to it, like hierarchies.
There's a logical series of antecedents.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that was the determinism. That's the deepest teaching of the Buddha, is this logical series of antecedents that occur simultaneously. And so it made me so happy when you said that. Yeah, I agree. That's what they're teaching here at UCLA. And I was so happy because at that point I had stopped going to community college, and I was pretty much educating myself using my teacher's explanations of reality. And I was so happy to hear that, it concurs with what they're teaching in the high level universities. That's awesome. And so that's another way that you helped me out. So I know I promised not to keep you for longer than 2 hours.
Sorry.
So, I guess our last topic is, I asked you if you had any topics you wanted to discuss about reality, or that you're fascinated, or any questions you had about reality. Were you able to think of any?
I didn't, not in that way. I guess everything I wanted to talk about, we talked about. Mostly wanted to touch on like what enlightenment means, and like how I feel it's not something vague and abstract. It's something, you know, like an enlightened person could sit in this room next to me and it would just be like, okay, they just see more of reality than I do, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's
not something supernatural.
No. And you know, that's why the idea of God is kind of crazy, to think of God as like you know, everlasting or anything like that. Where this idea of awakening or enlightenment is it's possible. It's not supernatural. It's natural. It's a possibility.
Right.
The Buddha was what we call the Buddha, the organism we label as the Buddha, was walking around teaching everyone, and he was awakened, right? So he could have sat next to you.
Right. And we could have talked, and it'd be words that would make sense.
Yes.
I think that's also one of the lessons that I had to learn over and over and over again. Again, that words do matter. And also I wanted to just share that with you, that I believe that these things that are seemingly separate and have nothing to do with each other, like breath and knowledge, are really the same thing to me, because I don't know, like it's hard to prove it in words, but I see no difference in between like the light of your mind and the light of love. The light of consciousness is the same. It's just in a different form.
I once had a conversation with Joanna, and the closest thing to what you're saying that I came up with was that in reality, all there is just this one wave. And it's just different patterns of this one wave.
Yeah, it's just in a different configuration or at a different vibration at any given time, but everything is sort of a reflection of light. And that's just like scratching the surface. What does that even mean, right?
It's interesting. Isn't that what our friend C used to talk about all the time?
Yeah, he used to say that a lot. He believes in light.
And he not only believes in light, he like worshipped and loved light.
Like we all are light. If you need true substance, the light will sustain you. Yeah.
Speaking of people with extreme patience, he had extreme patience.
Yeah.
I never seen him get riled up, especially in deep philosophical matters. And I know I was a stubborn person to talk to. I would definitely get into it.
I riled them up once, but
oh, you did?
we were drinking, so probably. Yeah.
Chemical influences.
That's
funny. The only, love, breath, light, all being similar. I guess I can dig it in the sense that it's all one big wave.
Yeah.
Though another thing, there are three aspects that I see as synonymous, and that's goodness, happiness, and wisdom. Are all the same thing.
I would include those as well
in
my equation.
Yes.
Yeah, I forgot goodness. The highest form of the good is light.
Yes. And, most people think that to be good means to forego your happiness. Like, I don't want to be good because good means I can't be happy. But that's the biggest misconception I can think of. And a lot of it happened, I think, is because in Western society, they did throw out a lot of religion, and they threw out, my teacher said, they threw out the baby with the bathwater. And so now goodness has this taint in their mouth because they see it too much with religion. And
they see it as an oppressive, moralizing, strict rule book, right?
That's right.
Where it's more supposed to be like, hey, these are the guidelines if you want to be a disciplined person, which you do.
Yeah, if you want happiness, if you want to be good, you want to be happy, and you want to be wise.
It comes from hard work and discipline. And these are like self-imposed rules that, you would come up on your own anyway, but here they are.
Yeah, and you're not doing them because someone else told you to, because if you are doing it for those reasons, they're going to be fruitless.
Right. Yeah, it's like a child. You're telling them, don't do this, don't do that. The child can grow up resenting that, hey, they're just telling me what to do. I just want to be free. Or the child can grow up and see, hey, this is actually for my own good.
That's true. Sadhu. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. What I did want to ask you is, what do you think is the point of life?
To achieve great things, to reach your highest self, to become who you are, like your own inner nature that's yet to be expressed. You have to do your best to express that.
And you do this in one life?
You try your best in one life.
And what happens if you don't achieve it?
You go under, and that's fine. Others will come.
You go under?
Life has a bunch of bodies to throw at the problem. We're like little army ants, even though we like to think of ourselves as individuals. It's all right if you don't achieve your purpose. It's not something to be despaired over. And if you are despaired in itself, I'm not trying to be callous, but if you take like a high level view of the world, everything's all right. Like there's not really any problems. Like the stuff that human beings do to each other, it's human beings expressing their own nature to each other. It's fucked up, but at the same time, it's all right. Until you transcend it, you're gonna be there. But being there is a process. You're not doing anything wrong by trying to grow.
Is that samsara?
If I had to label it, yeah, but I would take the stance of that class we had a long time ago and say that's also the same as nirvana. like the world is both at the same time. There's no clear delineation. It's almost like effortless. Just let it be. And like if you struggle with your goals, or not even that, the acts, you should live your life as if everything you do matters and you're absolutely responsible for everything that comes out of your mouth, all the movements of your body and your hands. But at the same time, you're a biological machine. You don't really have control. You have the illusion of control. Don't be too hard on yourself. You don't have free will, but you should live life as if you had free will.
Yeah, that's at least comforting.
No one's really to blame for anything.
Do you think there is suffering in nirvana?
Yeah. But that suffering, it's like sweet suffering, you know, like kind of like a masochistic kind of thing. The pain of existence is good.
So that's interesting. You know, that's the school that I came from. You know, I came from, you know, I got exposed to Buddhism, really exposed to the real Buddhism through Zen. And, you know, Zen is an offshoot of Mahayana Buddhism, and they formulate everything you have spoken of. So the question of whether nirvana...
Let me add that I am no Zen master.
A Zen master wouldn't say they're a Zen master. So who knows? When I look at the question of nirvana and samsara, whether they're the same or different, I can only go by my understanding at this moment based on the experiences and studies I've done. And I see samsara and nirvana as states of mind and not locations in space and time. So in reality, there is no space or time. These are just tools of animal perception. And so the way I think, nirvana and samsara are not the same, since we're not talking about location in space and time. We are talking about a state of mind. And for someone in the state of mind of nirvana, there is no suffering, there is no samsara. And for someone in the state of mind of samsara, there is no freedom from suffering. There's no nirvana. So that's how I would see it. And I know it's not the same as what you were trying to say, but it's also not completely different either.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. They are states of being. They're also words used to describe things.
Hey, but words matter.
Yeah, words do matter, but it's a label you're using to point at something, right?
Of course,
it's not the truth.
The map is not the territory.
Exactly.
You cannot eat the menu.
This is samsara, this is not, you know, I know you're not getting into that, but people can fall into that trap. Absolutely.
And do you agree that space and time are not objective realities?
Yeah, it's those are tricky. I agree that they are tools of animal perception, but I do believe that they are necessary for the perception to occur, and therefore they must be part of the structure of being in some way, even if not out there. Right?
See, that's interesting. Have you ever heard of something called biocentrism?
Yeah. It's the view that everything is central to biology, like it's really the fundamental driving force in reality.
Yeah. So they say that the universe did not create life, but rather the life created the universe. That's the idea. And, you know, if we look at how experience occurs, there's the sense stimulation, and it's basically electromagnetic waves simulating nerve receptors. And when the nerve receptor is stimulated, there's transduction that creates that energy into an electrical signal that goes up through the nerves of the spine to the brain. And based on this stimulation, the sense information, the brain starts constructing and creating what we call the world and the self. And in order to talk about the world and the self, we have to talk about existence. And in order to talk about existence, we have to talk about space and time. And from this understanding, this neurobiological perspective, what is essential or fundamental is experience, and experience precedes existence, because existence comes about only as a cognitive interpretation based on the sense stimulation. So that's from the school that
what you're saying right now, though, sounds like existence precedes essence. You're just calling what he calls existence experience, and essence existence, right? But by the time you get to existence in your definition, the way you just described it, that would be something that like Jean-Paul Sartre would call essence, because that's already like a world that's defined.
Yeah, and the only reason there's a correlation is because they see existence as the fundamental,
right?
But here
you're just calling that experience.
And it's not just something I'm calling; it's a process I'm describing,
right?
That we can both see,
right?
So that's a difference. When we talk about existence, it's a concept, not a process.
Yeah.
So that's the fundamental common sense that people can't grasp. They can't grasp that idea, because when they think that, science is all about objects that exist, right?
It tries to be.
Yeah. So that's how everyone sees it. When the meditator goes to the temple, they think the meditator exists, and they think the temple exists, and they think that they go and they meet. But in reality, that's not what's happening. In reality, the organism gets stimulated by all the energy, and then based on that sense stimulation, we construct the idea of a temple and a meditator, because experience gets split into the objective experience and the subjective experience. And before it gets split, there was only experience, and that's where the teachings of the Buddha are coming from. That's why, I guess we'll finish it with this, but, there was a school, the three philosophers in the United Kingdom. There was John Locke, who talked about materialism. They said there was no body. There's no mind. There's only the body. And then there was Bishop Berkeley, who said that that the only way we can even think of something called the body is by using the mind. And so there is really no body. There's only the mind, because it's just a perception that you're calling the body. And then there was the Scottish David Hume, who said that all there is sense experience, that they were both right and they were both wrong. And all we can talk about is sense experience.
Yeah, I definitely agree more with Hume than with Locke and Berkeley. There's definitely something to the idea that like all is mental, right? But when you start talking about it starting at experience, sometimes it just brings back the question, okay, where does this experience come from? If all you're getting is, vibrations through sense perception, what creates the vibration? And
that's where I get to the fundamental that it's just one big wave.
Just one big wave. All is one.
All is nothing. All is one and all is nothing at the same time. Superposition.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to finish this podcast off. Thank you very much, Ivan, for hosting. And we'll definitely have you back sometime soon. I know. I didn't even get to ask. Joanna told me to ask you a question. Do you have like 5 more minutes?
Yeah, go for it.
So Joanna, I'm sorry for asking your question at the end, but how did you go from studying, majoring, and getting your degree in philosophy to information technology that's your career now?
Yeah, just the man's gotta eat. It's really the main drive here. I could sit around doing syllogisms all day, but no one's gonna pay me for it until I found out, hey, in computer science, they will pay you for it. So um, I was, I graduated from UCLA and I needed a job. So I started working at UCLA at what is now called the Luskin Center.
Yes.
Which is like a hotel in the middle of campus. Yeah, and I was like the HR coordinator there, so I helped like onboard people and get them hired, get their W-2s and all that stuff.
Yes.
Then when I moved out here, I sort of went into a similar thing, HR related, called a compensation analyst, where I sort of just kind of made sure that the doctors here at UCSD were getting paid properly, you know, like the checks and all of that was right. And
yes,
when they were taking time off, it was being counted, you know, correctly. Yes. Those things weren't paying the bills well.
Yes.
Like they required a lot of work and they're very stressful. And I just felt like I needed more. I needed a way to get out. So I found a coding boot camp. I knew that I was good at logic. I've always been good at computers. Might as well just go all in, go all out. And that's how I got into it. I found the boot camp here at UCSD Extension. And I just took it and decided this is my career now.
So the coding boot camp, how long was that?
I think it was 12 weeks. I did the accelerated one just because I'm like, I need to pay these bills. And like something happened to me then. I lost my job.
Yes.
I got fired.
Yes.
So I was in a downward spiral. I needed something.
Yes.
And it needed something
quick. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just went for it.
Yes. And was it harder, easier than you expected?
It was definitely harder than I expected. I did not just get to go in and just deduce everything. You know, I had to put work. In my everyday job, it is a challenge. Like it's challenging. It's a challenging field, but it's very rewarding because you're actually solving problems. You're actually, you know, they seem like, you know, silly problems like, oh, why doesn't this user interface do this instead? What should we do with the logic to make it so? But it is rewarding because it is a problem that my mind is focused on. And I found that brings me peace.
Yeah. Do you know why I think that brings you peace?
I think, go ahead.
No, tell me. I want to know. I want to know what you think.
I think it goes back to what I was saying about my essential nature. Like being a kid, I always just want to bring order to the chaos. And code is just chaos, dude. If you look at another developer's code, your initial thought is, what the hell did this asshole do? Why didn't he make it all nice and neat for, you know, the next guy to just come and fix it or update it if something needs to be updated? So that really speaks to me. It's like a puzzle I get to work on every day.
I definitely agree with that. I tend to see everything now, fortunately or unfortunately, from a biological standpoint. And so what you're doing when, you know, first of all, they said that human beings are problem solving machines. And I think that's what you're saying about your essential nature. Also, when you're not engaging your attention, your mind is just ruminating, usually self-referential thoughts about the past and future. But when you're engaging the attention systems in your brain, that shuts off all self-referential rumination about past and future. And when you're free from self-referential rumination about past and future, your body calms down, and your body relaxes, and your mind comes down. And when you're engaging your attention systems, you get to actually relax and calm down and feel good and happy. What do you think?
I definitely agree with that. And it was something I wanted to bring up earlier. In that class we had with Professor Noor, he brought up sports at the end.
Oh, yeah.
It ended up with talking about being in a state of flow.
Yes.
Which is kind of like what I get into sometimes when I'm coding. Like
yes.
The world around me kind of disappears. but at the same time, I'm hyper aware.
Yeah.
The thing I'm hyper aware about is the thing I'm focused on.
Yes. And that allows you not to be emotional.
Right.
And that's why I always joke that my first introduction to meditation was watching Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant play, because they would stay cool, calm, and collected in the highest, most intense, stressful moments in front of 30,000 fans live. And
to me, that's a form of enlightenment.
Yeah.
You're aware of everything. You know where every player is, you know where the ball is, you know which path you're supposed to take to get to the basket the fastest. Yeah. Or you know,
it's like you're getting from. It's like you're getting out of your own way.
It's like you have this hyper awareness too. Yeah, it's both. Yeah,
because when you're not self-referential, you're open, you're aware. That's very interesting. You're right, we did finish up with that in like sports psychology. Very deep. So do you think it's and I wouldn't say easy, do you think it's possible for someone to transition from like clerical work or jobs of that manner to job in coding and information technology?
The thing about these types of jobs is there's always demand. Like there's not enough people who know this, that all the jobs are filled up. So if you want to get into it, you definitely can. I don't think you necessarily need to do a boot camp. I sort of did it just as, you know, my cheat code to try to get in fastest and to have, you know, a paper to show people. But if she really wants to get into it, like, you know, you could just follow YouTube tutorials and, you know, do your best, have like build your own portfolio, and then start applying to jobs. And then when, you know, you start getting callbacks, just show them, oh, look, I did this project on my own. I did this other project on my own. I know this, and that technology. And it's not going to be easy. Like you're definitely going to be working hard, but it's doable. It's possible. It's not beyond the realm of possibility.
And is it a much more satisfying and more pleasurable career than what you were doing as an analyst?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with the company I'm at. I work for this company called Joppy Connect or Joppy. Mm-hmm. They have they're a smart home company and telecommunications. Well, I'm talking about the apps that we're building. We're a software company, but we build a smart home app and a telecommunications app for like health services and stuff. So like if a small clinic wants to use our software, it'll help them like create appointments, have video appointments like Zoom meetings, but that are a little bit more secure than just a standard Zoom meeting. They have SMS messages right there from the platform, and faxes, you know, so you can send your insurance documents, because some people still use fax in the insurance world. So we're building that, and my boss just kind of trusts me on a day-to-day basis to move the project along, because like I'm a developer, he's not.
He placed his trust in you.
Right. He hired me to develop. If I'm not capable of developing, I shouldn't be there.
Yes.
But because I am there, I like it because of just the trust and the respect I get, which I didn't get before. It was more like my boss was looking over my shoulder, you know, watching my hours, watching my breaks, you know, standard job stuff.
Yeah. That's stressful, right?
It's very stressful. You want to escape that, because at the same time, you're putting all that stress on yourself, and those jobs don't even pay that much. The higher you go in paying jobs, like the less people worry about like what you're doing on a, you know, moment to moment basis, and they're more worried about results. And as long as like you're delivering, like I could tell my boss, hey, I got to step out for a few hours. He'll be like, all right, cool. Just you know, have this task by tomorrow or whatever. And it's totally fine.
Wow. That must feel so liberating.
It was. I am very, very happy with this company.
I'm so happy to hear that. I know how hard you worked all your life, so I'm happy to hear you that you've, at least in career wise, you found something that you enjoy and that you feel fulfilled with. So that's wonderful.
Yeah. And the other benefit about this is I'm working remotely. I'm at my house right now.
Yes.
I was here all day working.
Yes.
And it's the same place where I'm sitting having this interview. So that's really cool because like you can get remote jobs doing other stuff, but with web development, it's almost like guaranteed that you'll be able to find something remote. And if that's something you're looking for, just based on your lifestyle, I definitely would recommend it.
Wow. Yeah, I think Joanna's going to be psyched to hear this. And do you think it's easy to find these coding boot camps?
Yeah, there's a ton out there. Some of them tell you, hey, you don't have to pay us until you get a job. I wouldn't really trust those. Mm-hmm. Some of them are a little bit pricey. But if you don't really want to do one, like you can put together a plan, like just based on YouTube videos. And there's a lot of technologies coming out nowadays for building like user interfaces or building a backend or a database or stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That like these boot camps themselves are outdated. They're teaching you stuff that the industry was into like 2 years ago. Something new came out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How do you stay updated?
You just gotta stay on the news a lot. Like constantly be looking at articles. Yeah, and be on forums. Yeah, I'm on Stack Overflow a lot. I'm on YouTube a lot.
Good.
Yeah, and if your friend is really interested, I could help her with that.
Yeah, definitely.
To get in touch.
Thank you very much. I think that would be very nice of you, and I'm sure we're going to have you be a guest again. Maybe we can tackle some sutras, and it's always, I would love to hear your perspective on some of the sutras that we go over with the teachings of the Buddha.
That'd be great. Yeah, just let me know ahead of time so I can do my homework.
It sounds good. Well, any last words, Ivan?
I'm all out of words. Just reach for your highest self always at all times. Don't let anything stop you.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu means like excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you, Ivan, once again for joining me. I've been waiting for this. Now you know how influential you are in my life, and without you, there probably would not be this Underground Dhamma podcast. So you're always going to be an honorary co-host. And
thank you. I'm glad, and I hope to be back many times.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone who has listened thus far. I know we're getting longer and longer, so the real ones always finish listening to the end. And for everyone listening, may you all be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. Sukhi Hotu.
Become liberated. Become liberated. And when you find out, you see, that there isn't any way of forcing it, that for most people is the only way of getting them to stop forcing it. Because they won't believe when you tell them in the first instance, you've got to do this without forcing it. They'll say, well, it won't work, it won't happen, because I'm very unevolved. I'm just an ordinary human being, I'm just poor little me. And if I don't force it, nothing will happen. I have people who think that if they don't struggle and strain, they won't have a bowel movement, or whatever it is. They think they've got to do that work in order to make it happen. In other words, all that is based on lack of faith, not trusting life. And to get people to trust life who don't trust it, you have to trick them. They won't jump into the water, so you have to throw them in. And if they are very unwilling to be thrown in, they're going to take diving lessons, you see, in which they're going to go all through, they're going to read books about diving, they're going to do all the preliminary exercises for diving, they're going to stand on the edge of the diving board and inquire whether there's the right posture until somebody comes up beside and kicks them in the butt. And they're in the water, and they're in the water. Become liberated. Become liberated. Become liberated. Become liberated. Become liberated. When you find out, you see, that there isn't any way of forcing it, that for most people is the only way of getting them to stop forcing it. Because they won't believe when you tell them in the first instance, you've got to do this without forcing it. They'll say, well, it won't work, it won't happen, because I'm very unevolved. I'm just an ordinary human being, I'm just poor little me, and if I don't force it, nothing will happen. I have people who think that if they don't struggle and strain, they won't have a bowel movement, or whatever it is. They think they've got to do that work in order to make it happen. In other words, all that is based on lack of faith, not trusting life. And to get people to trust life who don't trust it, you have to trick them. They won't jump into the water, so you have to throw them in. And if they are very unwilling to be thrown in, they're going to take diving lessons, you see, in which they're going to go all through, they're going to read books about diving, they're going to do all the preliminary exercises for diving, they're going to stand on the edge of the diving board and inquire whether there's the right posture until somebody comes up beside and kicks them in the butt. And they're in the water, and they're in the water, and they're in the water. Become liberated, liberate, 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 liberate.